Same basic palette, except we're adding a couple of colors just because we're along the coastline here. We're going to add some phthalo yellow green, and I'm going to use some cobalt. Now you can also use cerulean blue if you want to get more of the aqua color. Well, the cobalt mixed with some of these other colors we're going to use today in the next few weeks will give us a similar effect. Now I've already made a very light sketch. I'm going to go ahead and darken the sketch just so that you'll see it here. Now I'm using my photographs as my reference material. I'm going to compose the painting based on this one here, with the old ship here, the old shrimp boat. We do have, now by the way, these are little inlet harbors that come way back inland off of the Gulf. It's really not anything real truly picturesque just looking at open water, but when you get back in these little inlands where you have trees and grasses and sand and all these things, little buildings, it's really interesting. So we have this little inland cove here. We have a shoreline right here. So we'll sketch that in, sort of a parallel line, about a third of the way down from the top of the canvas. We also have some very distant hills right back here that are tree covered. Lots of pine trees down here. We have the ship or the boat right here. Now I want to see the entire boat. This is going to be an important thing in this painting. And so let's get in there. There's another one, right? A little, I don't know what they call it, a little skiff or just a little boat that they use for repairing and doing little miscellaneous jobs. Part of the dock is right here, which we'll see. And of course we have all the rigging and everything for the boat here. And I want to make sure you sketch that. And I'm wiping out the background. And over here is part of the old dock buildings. Telephone pole there or something. Oh, you see barrels and cans and buckets and all kinds of stuff scattered along the shoreline there. That's a real interesting little part right there that we're going to focus on sometime later. Now, in oil painting, it's a good idea to go ahead and pre-sketch just a little bit more, a little bit better, especially if you're a beginner, so you can kind of follow things. We're going to do pretty much a wet-on-wet painting. Now, those of you that are painting with the oils, see, you're going to let your paintings dry from week to week, so you're going to paint a wet on dry technique, which is similar to acrylic painting. You're going to block it in today. Next week when you come back, you're going to have to put on the paint a little drier, okay, because it's dry underneath, and what you put on top will drag and create a little bit different blending technique. So when you paint this, I'm going to suggest that maybe you perhaps just mostly take notes or block it in the first time and then wait till we're done with the painting and then go back and try to do it in its entirety so that you can do wet on wet. Now over here we have some bushes. Now we're not going to put these bushes in. It's going to be these seaweeds here along the edge here. We're going to turn these into the seagrass or seaweeds, whatever you want to call them. Some people call them sea oats because they look like kind of like a wheat field or an oat field. Then you're going to have the way the sand, let's see if I've got a photograph here. If not, I've got some more we'll pull out. Anyway, the sand drifts and washes, the tide comes in and out up against the shoreline here. This will be the sand. This will be the ripples and the little movements of the water against the sand. There'll be little pockets of this grass up here, especially in the corner here. And over here there's a bigger pocket that kind of leans into the painting like this. And quite likely we may have, you know, part of another pier or something sticking out here. There's all these old pier posts are so interesting. They kind of aid you. In fact, right out beside me here, there's part of an old dock here with several boats in there, and there's some old pier posts sticking up there that kind of really add a nice look to the composition. Now, of course, the masts over here will help break up the composition, but I think to make it just a little more interesting and add a little more contrast, let's pull our trees up here just a little bit higher on this side, which will also create a nice pocket of negative space and will contrast nicely against the building there. Okay, so we've got our nice little harbor here. We've got the sandy beach. We've got the grass. We've got some different components to this painting than we've had in some of the other ones. Now, we may put a couple of the shorebirds, maybe a seagull or two flying around in the distance or sitting down along the shoreline here, because on the shoreline here, a lot of the footprints, you'll see there are just hundreds and hundreds of shorebirds that walk along the shoreline and eat and breed and do all those things. So it's kind of interesting to be down here and watch all the activity of the birds and the animals as we're painting. In fact, if you hear any strange noises back here, There's a lot of birds, there's seagulls, there's pelicans, there's all kinds of the boats and activity going along, so it's kind of part of the fun of being here. So hope you enjoy the program as much as we are bringing it to you. All right, now let's get started. We've got the basic rough sketch there. Let's go down to our palette, and this time we need to take our palette knife. Now remember, with the water mixable oils, all you need is just a can of water. I am, however, using a little bit of alkyd painting medium if I want to get something real creamy, and working out here on location with the water evaporating quickly with the wind. I like to have a little alkyd because it makes it real creamy and it lasts a little longer than just putting water in there, although you can use a little bit of both, okay? Now let's get a nice, clean, rich blue sky. Okay, that's the first thing we're going to do. And you're going to do that by taking your titanium white. Takes about 1/4 as much cobalt and about equal amounts of the ultramarine and a touch of purple, just a touch, about the size of a pea. Mix this together. Now if you want to put a drop or two, and you always have to shake this really good, a drop or two of the alkyd, and what I normally do is just take a knife, palette knife, you know, just put a couple of drops in like this. This also speeds up the drying time of your oil painting, but mostly it makes it real creamy, wetter than water. It's real smooth. Okay, so mix that in good there. Now I always like to show you all these things from the beginning because many of you are beginners just joining us for the first time. Some of you are advanced painters and want a little more interesting things, and we'll try to get some of those in too. Okay, but see what a beautiful clean color that is? Now we're going to paint the sky just pretty much that color, and we're also going to use it in the water here. Okay, now after you get this mixed real well, notice how good I'm mixing it. It's very important that you get any medium, whether it's water or any medium, in with your paint. Mix real well, okay? Because then it all bonds together good. All the pigments work together. All right, now, taking your number 12 bristle brush, all I want you to do at this point is just start at the horizon line like this, and you can just kind of go right along the edge where the trees are going to be back there, and just use little short, choppy, crisscross strokes. Now you don't have to put the paint on real thick, but put it thick enough to cover the canvas very well so there's no canvas showing through. If you want a few more brush strokes, that's fine. I'm going to make this painting a little brighter. I am going to paint around the cabin of the boat there because I really want to emphasize it, and of course being oil paint, the wet background will cause a problem when we start to put the cabin, paint the cabin in. So paint around the edge of your trees a little bit. Big, nice, clean strokes here. I don't mean big X's, they're really nice, just full strokes is what I really should say. Work down in around the edges of your trees very quickly and very loosely. Just work right on up through here. Now, like I said, the sky is not the feature of this painting, but the water, the sand, the boat, some of the other components are very, very important to the painting, so we don't want to put a lot of emphasis on the sky. And that's pretty much a standard rule in most painting. If you're going to put too much emphasis on your sky, then you're going to end up with a very busy painting if you have a lot of things going on in the base of the painting or in the foreground. So very quickly, just paint your sky on here. Like I said, if you're struggling with this program having to let, from week to week, since we don't finish a painting in one sitting, it's impossible with the technique that I use. But you can always just take notes or follow this along as best you can from memory or whatever, and then come back in when we're done with the painting and do it in its entirety if you want to do the wet on wet technique. Otherwise, you can figure out what to do as it dries. You just use a little bit less paint most of the time for blending. Okay, now we've almost got this covered. Now after you've got this part on, now the wind's picking up out here pretty good, so we have to be a little bit careful about what we're going to do here, because if you're not real careful, sometimes if you're trying to form something and it blows your canvas, it'll create an edge or a detail that you don't want to be there. So, you know, it's a good idea to keep a hand on it. I push on the canvas to keep it from bouncing, and so I won't make too many mistakes. Now, this area of the water, we're going to paint this next, but we're not going to paint it the same color along the edges. We're going to darken this a little bit, and the way we're going to do this now is sort of a systematic. Scoop some of this over. Let's go back to the palette here, and I want you to take a little bit of this color now, not the whole thing, but just take another scoop of it there. I want you to add some some purple. Where's my purple? There we go. Add some purple. A little bit of your sap green. Now this is the sap green we use there. I want you to darken this. Let's take a look at it here. Now down along the Gulf here, back in these little inlet, these little harbors, we have a real muddy bottom water. So the water is not clear, real crystal clear like it is in some of your freshwater lakes and streams. It's got a different look to it. So the water, although we'll pick up light from there, it's got a naturally sort of a greenish, grayish, sort of a brownish color, almost an army green, I guess you might say. But along the edges here, now let's put a little more green, a touch more purple. Get this just a little bit darker. There we go. That's a little better. Now, as you know, in oil painting, we do a little more mixing than we do in the acrylics. We pre-mix. Now we switch to our number 6 bristle brush. And by the way, just to show you the uniqueness and how wonderful these water mixable oils are, these are the same brushes I was using in our acrylic programs just yesterday. So I just rinsed them out and they're ready to go into my Max oils. When I'm done with the oils, then we'll just wipe them out, rinse them out, and go back into the acrylic. So it's good to use them any way you want to. Same brushes over and over. Now take this color and come right below the shoreline here. Don't go right to the edge of the shoreline, just go right below. You'll have a little strip between your sketch and the actual water. Come right across, like so. I want you to come around the edge of the boat here, just below like this. Don't get carried away. Kind of round underneath the dock there and back over here, just kind of smudging it like this. Touch more green. This is a beautiful color. Doesn't have a name, but it's a nice color. Come right below the dock there. Okay, now I'm kind of smudging this carefully. It's okay if you paint over where you sketched your grass in there, because we're going to have to scrape some of that off probably anyway, or if your painting's dry, you can paint right on top of it. Here comes another fishing boat here. There's a lot of guys out here doing some fishing up in the bayous here. They catch catfish and other kinds of fish, speckled trout, I understand, and some other things back here. All right, now after you've kind of softened the edge, now gradually, and I mean very gradually, start adding a little bit of this blue color, the sky color, into this. Now here's the secret. Use horizontal strokes like this. Gently blend into the water the green color, blending it up into the water just a little bit. Now this water is really very shallow out here, just a few feet deep, and then when, of course, as you go way out in the Gulf, it gets very deep, but along the edges here, it's pretty shallow. Now I'm just using these nice, short, choppy sort of I don't know, sort of a concave stroke, just a little wave. Notice where I'm holding my brush too. Just keep remembering now, they put long handles on paintbrushes for reasons. So that you'll hold them back, you won't have your nose stuck right up on your canvas the whole time like most of you have a tendency to do when you're first learning. As you come out into the water, begin adding a little bit more of the blue here, so it's a little bit cleaner, and then every once in a while you got to dab in a little bit of this darker color so that we get back to the reality of the mud bottom water, okay? Walking in some of the restaurants, you know, they have what they call the Mississippi mud pie, some kind of dessert with chocolate, and I guess that comes from the terminology that these are muddy bayous back here, you know, there's some real muddy bottoms, okay? Now I'm picking up a little bit of the green, but do this gradually. See how I'm doing this? Don't make it solid. Leave some of the blue coming through. Don't be afraid of this. Okay, you put a little bit of the green, then you come back, pick up a little bit of the blue, and you do this process all the way towards the shoreline. This first layer of shore right there is going to be where we start the sand and the water overlapping each other, all right? But you got to get to that point first by doing this system here. Now we will have some highlighting back on top of the water towards the end of this painting in a few weeks, but right now just go back and forth, creating the effect that we're after here. Building this blue. I love this blue color. It's a good clean color. But when you mix it with this greenish color that we just mixed up, it creates the perfect value and the perfect color for this type of painting. I said I add a little green here. And when I say green, I'm talking about our green mixture. So when I use that word, don't get confused about putting pure green in there or some other kind of green. This is our green mixture, okay? Now this is a relatively slow process, but it's an important process, so you need to stay with it. I think we've become such a society used to doing everything instantly, overnight, that whenever you grab a paintbrush, you think you're going to do a painting just right now, and that's not the truth. If you want to be a fine artist, truly accomplish good work, and I don't mean be great and famous and all that, but just really be well-grounded and do good work, you've got to learn to take it in steps. Slowly but surely, learn the basics of good, solid painting. And then you'll be much happier, and the end results are so much more effective. Okay, just keep coming forward. Now, as we come a little bit closer to the shoreline here in a minute, we will start adding some other colors. But we're not quite ready for that yet. About an inch from this first line here, we will begin adding some other colors. Right now, just stick with the blue and this green mixture. Coming across here. Notice I'm not getting in a hurry. I'm really wanting to control this now because it's important that you have good control over this color. You get it all too blue or you get it all too green, and you're going to really be sorry. And the reason is because it will overpower your painting. Now see, I'm starting to get close to the shoreline there. Out here, it's not quite there yet. So I pick up a little more blue, then I pick up a little green, a little bit of blue, a little bit of the green, and just kind of bounce back and forth until you get all the colors in there that you want to have. Okay, now we're just about close enough, I think, to the shoreline here. We can begin adding a couple more colors. Now, one of the things I like to do is, since white's such a critical color, I like to take a little bit of white out here and put some the alkyd painting medium in there and just have it handy, okay? So you can just pour a little bit of this painting medium right in there. and then take your knife and mix it in good, because we're going to use a little bit of white now to come up towards the shoreline. Then we're going to add a little bit of yellow and just a good variety of different colors, maybe a little red even, okay? All right, now remember what I told you about blocking, mixing very, very well. This has to be mixed extremely well. Okay, now we got that mixed good. Now take your same brush that you were just using, just dip into the edge of this and begin softening and lightening this. See, like I'm doing here? As you come up to the water's edge now, or to the shoreline here, add the white and work it back up into, back and forth like this, up and down. This is something you should practice. Doesn't matter if you're an acrylic painter or an oil painter, it makes no difference whatsoever. See how pretty and clean that is, and yet it's got a nice touch to it. It's soft, and as we hit the shoreline here and we get into our tans and grays and browns, it instantly blends. Okay, just keep coming across here. So I'm working up. Wind's kind of bothering us here today, so I got to hold this down a little bit. Now what I'd like for you to do between now and our next session, at least get this much done, okay? Because we're running out of time here, and we're going to have to just probably spend about what we have left just getting down to our water's edge here. So what I want you to do is concentrate on blending this white right up against the edge. Now notice it's not pure white because you've got some of that color on your brush. In fact, if you apply a little heavier pressure, some of the mud that's in your brush comes out and creates a soft color. Now come right along this edge like this. And I'm taking a little bit of this white now and I'm moving it back into the center of the water. See, back in here? Don't be afraid to put just a little of it back in here, creating some little white choppy areas. Just be very careful not to overdo it. And on over here, pick up a little more white back in through here. Okay, I think we've pretty much got this about where we want it to be here. Let's put a little bit more right in through here. Now, what I like to do if I've overdone it by chance, and there's a chance you will, don't hesitate to pick up a little bit of the blue, a little bit of the green, and go ahead and add some of it right along here to soften or tie the edges together, because that'll help create a little bit more softness. You can't have a hard line. What I really want you to avoid here is having any definite beginning and ending to where the water starts and the colors start. One starts and the other ends. So I always try to go in and soften those edges together, just like that. Don't blend too much. Now this is where the 3 P's come into play. Many of you have heard me talk about the 3 P's on several occasions. Stands for don't piddle, play, or putter, and I want to make sure that you get that down. If you piddle too much with this, it'll turn to mud, especially if you're an oil painter. And mud is the worst enemy you can have. There's 2 kinds of mud though. There's a clean mud and a dirty mud, and we want clean mud here, okay? Well, they just gave me the sign. We're about to run out of time. If you like the program, please call your local station, let them know how much, and keep the cards and letters coming. We'll try to answer your questions on the program, okay? Well, God bless you. Stay inspired. Keep painting. We'll see you again in another inspiration of painting. Glad you could join us again today. We're going to continue on with our painting down here on the Gulf Coast at the southern end of Mississippi. And we started last week, remember, making what we call a composite painting. Now, we haven't done that too often on the program, but it's time now for us to start learning some other, a little more advanced techniques in composition. And one of the ways is, a lot of times you can't always paint what you see because it's not always artistically good, but there may be 1 or 2 things in that particular setting that really intrigues you and is really interesting to you. So remember now, we've taken these photographs, several photographs, and we've put together, we're going to have the seaweeds here, or the sea oats, or whatever they call them, and the sand. We're going to have the shrimp boat right through here. We're We're gonna have some nice water, and I'm thinking about having a couple of pier posts from an old broken pier out here, maybe with a seagull on it or something. So we're gonna have a lot of interesting components to this painting. And even if you don't like the ocean, even if you don't like the coast, it doesn't matter. As an artist, you should be able to paint anything and learn from it. Then eventually, after you've learned all the techniques, you can branch off to anything you want to, okay? So please stick with me. Let's have a lot of fun here, and you'll enjoy this program, I'm sure. Now, the next step is we got to move into the background here. Now, we finished our water just before our last program ended. Now we've got the trees here in the background, and down here along this coastline here, you have endless groves of trees. They're just beautiful trees everywhere. It's really amazing to have trees that come right up down to the water's edge, basically. So here on the edge, if you're an oil painter and you're painting wet on wet, here's one little trick I want you to do so that the paint will go in a little bit cleaner. Take a paper towel, and I just wrap it around my finger. Now, if your painting's dry, you've had a week for yours to dry, you don't have to do this. But just smudge up like this some of the excess paint that's there so it won't be so thick. See, I'm just taking it off and just smudging it off here. Just getting some of the thickness off right in this little edge right there. Okay? Now, if your painting is dry, you can go ahead and just paint right on top of it, because it'll be like an acrylic then. You can just work right over it. But this helps kind of make the paint a little thinner on the edge there. It works real well. Okay, now what we're going to use for that color is we're going to take some of this greenish mixture that we used last week for the water, and I still have some mixed up here. If you don't have that, let me tell you what that is, okay? You take your light blue mixture that we have, which was white, ultramarine blue, and cobalt blue with a touch of purple. Get a nice rich blue sky color like this. Then you take that and you add Hooker's green, or sap green in oil painting here, or it's sap green, and purple. You just add sap green and purple till you get this nice sort of an army green color. Now we're going to take that color, part of it, and you're going to add some white to it. We've got our mixture of white here with a little bit of the alkyd painting medium in it. For those of you that missed the program last week, we're using what we call alkyd for a medium. Now we're working, remember, with the water mixable oils here, so we don't need any mediums really, and we don't really need that, except when I'm out here on location I found out it makes the paint creamy. The water that you normally would use with this doesn't evaporate as quickly. It doesn't evaporate as quickly as the water, so you have a little more painting time that keeps the paint creamy. All right, so now I add a little white to it to change the value slightly. I'm going to add a little more purple to it to give it a little bit of a, oh, you might say a little bit of a distant color, which grays it very nicely. Okay, let's test this color out up here against the sky and see if that's what we want. Yeah, I think that's pretty nice. It's not the same color. You don't want it to look exactly like the rest of the painting. Now, take your number 6 bristle brush. Now, see, I'm just going to wipe out the excess paint. Take a little bit of this grayish green color and just begin the process of creating some distant tree, just the basic shape of some trees like this. Right up into the sky area, and just kind of scumble this color right down along the edge of the, let's see, I've got this shrimp boat here, right down into the water, or to the edge of the boat, along the edge of the roof line of this old building back here, whatever it is, making sure that your color blends into the sky, okay? Now the wind's coming up, and like I said before, sometimes if you were doing much detail work, you'd want to hold the canvas or sometimes fasten it in some way that it doesn't bounce too much. We've got my easel tied down here now so that it doesn't bounce too much. But I'm just kind of dabbing and smudging and scumbling in some color here, and then I'm going to shape these trees just a little bit more after I get some color in here. I've gone along the roof line there. Gets the edge of the boat here. Actually, I guess it kind of comes down in between there a little bit more too. because on the back of the boat it's just empty except for some poles and some rigging and stuff like that that they use for shrimping. The shrimping industry down here is really taking a pounding, and I guess it is for the most part just about everywhere, because it's been overfished, and there are many fishermen that have been doing it for years now. We talked to some of them and some of the people in the community that are involved in the shrimping industry. It's starting to fade away because of overfishing, pollution, government regulations, which always gets in the way of people making a living. But sometimes you have to have the regulations in order to save what we have here for the future. So it's a catch-22. It's a tough spot to be in if you're a fisherman and you can't make a living at it. Okay, now after you kind of got those shaped in, let's come over here on the other side. Now go right down to close to the water's edge, but leave just a little strip of white between the dark green and the grayish color here. Paint around the edge of the boat. It's okay if you hit part of it there, and then just kind of smudge the shape of some little soft trees back here. There's not any you can see here. On this, all you see is just basic shapes. Now out here where we're located, there's some beautiful trees all along the shoreline here that have a great shape to them. There's pine trees and there's oak trees and there's all kinds of trees out here. I really didn't realize that there was this much vegetation along the shoreline here. I always thought it was a little more barren, but it's not, and it's beautiful. And we got lucky. This is the spring of the year. The program was probably airing sometime, maybe at a different time in your area, but we're painting this in the springtime, and the weather's just outstanding. Normally it's very hot and humid, but we caught it just right. Bugs aren't too bad. Now, notice how I'm kind of blending the background in there. I'm just kind of blending that background color into the trees. That softens them. Now, if you're painting with a dry background, you don't have to do much with it. You can just kind of scumble and smudge your shape in there and create a nice, interesting effect. Just come right on across. Don't be afraid. Just move on across over here. Now, these trees are not that important in the painting, other than the fact that they create sort of a barrier for your eyes so that you don't wander too far away from your center of interest. And I like this gray color. It's sort of subtle and soft. Okay, just kind of soften there. Across here like this. Okay, now I'm going to take this one here and I'm going to soften it and raise it up a little bit. I want it to be just a little taller. Now give it a nice shape there. Now we're doing good. Okay, now see, this gives a nice eye flow. Your eye kind of wanders through there carefully and very gracefully. Now right on the shoreline there, we want to make a little darker edge. So I want you to take your purple, just straight dioxazine purple, and a little bit of the hooker's green or the sap green. I'm so used to work with the acrylics. In the acrylics you use hooker's green. And I want you to take that color. See, it's a nice dark color. I want you to smudge it right along this edge, just like this, okay? Just smudge right along the edge and soften, okay? Now this is an important step here. I want you to soften this. I'm going to wipe my brush here. And I want you to soften this. So kind of push it up if you have to, or pull it up, whatever you have to do, but just kind of push it up like this, and then pull it down into the water, just to kind of smudge and soften this edge a little bit. It's fun to watch the birds out here because they just dive right down and catch the fish and then go back up. I tell you, if you've never painted out before on location, where nature is absolutely the only thing that, I mean, you can really see nature in action. Only the fittest survive. You've got the hunters and you've got the hunted. It's so fun to just sit here and watch it happen. Okay, you see I've got a nice, soft, rich, sort of a dark shoreline there. That creates a nice effect for now. Now, of course, remember, we're going to go back and highlight a lot of this stuff, so some of this will have color and more life later. However, right now, I'm going to rinse my brush. This is the beauty of those water mixable oils. You just rinse it out. And you can just lay your brush down. Now I'm going to build the color for the shadowed part of the sand. Now, this is going to seem odd to you, but that's part of learning. See, sand takes on in different times of the day. Like, for instance, here's the same sand. I want you to look at this very, very closely. If I can point this out better. In this time of the day, in the evening, you can see the sand has got sort of a yellowish golden tint to it, and the shadows have a bluish purplish tint to it, okay? Almost all shadows have a bluish tint to it, or a purplish tint. Now here you are, a little bit stronger day, when the sun's a little brighter, it's not so overcast, and look how white the sand is and how grayish the shadows are, okay? Every time the sun changes, every time the atmosphere changes, the color of the sand and the shadows are going to change slightly. So what we're going to do is create a generic mixture of the shadow color and the sand color, and we're going to do that right now. And it's going to be good to have this pile mixed up and save it throughout your painting so that you'll have it to get back to from time to time. Okay, now what I want you to do here, this color that we just used for the trees there, it's a perfect base for this. So take that color, and I've got a little bit here to work with. I want you to add quite a bit of white. See, quite a bit of white. Now I've got some of the alkyd painting medium mixed in with it, so that kind of makes it creamy. Just a few little drops and it makes a beautiful creamy mixture. Now I'm going to mix up quite a bit of this, so I'm going to put some more white in there. I'm going to add some purple to this now, about the size of a pea. I want a nice purplish color for this. See how nice that is? Now this is already almost the exact color of the shadow of the sand here. You can't really see it, but if you were to put that right up against there, you could tell that that's pretty close to the actual sand color, or the shadow color. Okay, mix that very well. Now you can put a couple of drops of water. If you're in your studio and you want to be a little creamy, a little smoother, just add a few drops of water, work it real good, and as the water evaporates out, it gets back to its stiffer state, so you have to rehydrate with water, or you can add the alkyd painting medium, which will kind of thin it down and keep it creamy a little longer. Okay, now then, mix this good. Then we're going to come over here and we're going to do the sand color. Now you're going to have to get out quite a bit of white for this. I'm going to mix it right about there. Now we have quite a, pretty good sized area here to work with. Now you just take your knife, the one you were just mixing with, and I don't even clean my knife off because I want some of that color to get in here. I'm going to add a few drops of my alkyd painting medium. I got to shake it first. You got to shake this really well. Here comes a big fishing boat up in the harbor here. Just a couple of drops of alkyd. Now to this I want you to add a little touch of burnt sienna. See, just a little touch of orange like this, a little touch of yellow like this. And with the mud that's on your brush, you mix this together really well. And we're going to create a real nice sandy color. And be sure you mix real well so that you don't have any solid color that will come out later when you start painting. It's a horrible thing to go in there and start painting, all of a sudden a smudge of orange comes out or a smudge of red or whatever. So be sure you get all the little pigments mixed together here. That's a beautiful sandy color. It's sort of an in-between color. It's not real yellow and it's not real orange. So I kind of like that. Now, after you've mixed that, then let's go back to your number 10 bristle brush. Number 10 bristle brush. And starting along the shoreline here, okay? Now this is going to be kind of an interesting thing to do. But you got to get this movement started like this, where your hand just swishes like this. If you could see, we started the sketch here like this, and every time you come across, you make these little sort of oval shapes, very, fairly parallel with the top and bottom of the canvas. You start first with this gray mixture that we mixed up, okay? You start right on the edge like this. See how I make these little swishes? Just like that. Now you blend it carefully into the water so it begins to smudge. Okay? And you end up with a very soft, subtle edge. You don't have any hard line whatsoever there, okay? Now you wipe your brush fairly often. Now I realize there's a lot of steps here, there's a lot of instruction I'm giving you, but one of the successes of this program and all the things we've been doing is the fact that we really put a lot of emphasis on teaching you how to. So be real patient as we learn all these little tricks. Now you take some of your sand color and you do this next, right next to that grayish color like this. See how I'm doing this? I'm swishing and angling, swishing and making these little swishes. You have to be very careful and very patient with this because you can't blend it all together or end up with a lot of mud that you're going to be very unhappy with. It's best to get it on, maybe hit it a couple of times to blend something, but to leave it alone as much as you can, all right? Out here they have these little bugs, and no one has figured out what the name of them is. I've heard them called everything from alligator gnats to no-seas because you can't see them. They're very tiny and they bite like an alligator, and they really hurt, and they leave a little whelp. So we're trying to protect ourselves here from these bugs. Okay, now, as you come across and you begin the process of putting in the gray, the sand, you intermix with the gray from time to time, just like this. See how I'm doing that? And it's very important that you see the actual ripples of the water as it comes up against the shore. This creates a very good effect. Now pick up your sand color again, do the similar thing here. And make big swishes. Or kind of like S's, I guess, sort of lazy S's, turned sideways and laying down. Kind of flattened out S's. Okay, now take a little bit more of this gray. Just swish. Don't leave any hard edges. This is really kind of fun. It also teaches you control. Most of us need a lot of control. Now let's think about something for a minute. Let's establish before we go any further just exactly where our sun's going to be coming from, okay? Now let me tell you a little bit about this. If the sunlight's going to be coming in, it looks like sort of from the left-hand side here, then we're going to build some clumps up where the sand is drifted up against these bushes. So let's plan that, okay? Let's use our knife here because the charcoal will get all messy. We are going to have grass clumps here, and probably down here, and a couple over here that go up into the water. So let's go ahead and kind of plan. There's a couple of smaller ones. We're not going to put the grass in yet. We're just going to plan where the shadows and highlights go. Now wipe your brush out, and on the back side of these, you go ahead and put a little swish, just a little comma stroke back there like that. Now watch this. Now that creates the drift from behind. I'm going to switch to a number 6 bristle brush now just to have it clean and use it only for the shading or the highlighting. Then you put the sand right here in front of it, going the other way. I see you create a drift coming up like that, and out of that drift is where we have our weeds, and then we can adjust it a little bit later if we need to, okay? So now you have a drift there. I'm drifting it back this way. I'm just kind of cleaning this up a little bit here. In fact, I think I'm going to pull this drift right on down like this. This is almost like doing snow. Okay, see how this drift comes back in this way? Very important that you get your eye moving back like this. Then you take your sand and drift it like this. Okay. Now, we almost went too far over here on this one, so I'm going to have to scrape it off a little bit. So let's get a small palette knife here. I'm going to scrape off this right here where the sand goes, and over here. You've got to get this a little cleaner. Take the sand, drift up against where these weeds are going to go, like this. And don't overwork it, okay? But you got to create that little drift. Drift it here. You have now wipe your brush and switch to your other brush and drift the sand behind like this. Kind of blend it in. And this also kind of forms the shadow from the weeds. Okay, let's put a little more shadow behind here. I'm dry brushing in a few little shadows just to kind of keep my movement going from the way the sand is supposed to be drifting. Okay. Take your sand color, number 6 brush. Now, it may have drifted over a little bit. But for the most part, this will stay sort of solid out here. There's not a whole lot of commotion going on in the middle part here. Okay, just sort of keep it soft and subtle. Don't worry too much about it. Okay, Now, as usual, we're getting ready to run out of time. Now, I'm not going to spend any more time than you're spending on this, at least from the program point of view. So what I want you to do is just take this in here, get these areas where we've got these drifts. I want you to spend between now and next week, see how I'm kind of acting back and forth, reacting one to the other, drifting the sand, making sure that they're tied together, it's got interesting form. And then you'll have a beautiful beginning to a wonderfully different and exciting painting. Well, if you like the program, please call your local station. Let them know how much. It's been a lot of fun bringing this to you today. Hope you've enjoyed it. God bless you. Stay inspired. We'll see you again real soon on another Inspiration of Painting. Well, I'm glad you could join us again today. We're going to continue our painting down here on the beautiful Gulf Coast of Mississippi. And we're not too far from the Gulf Shore National Seashore. It's a wonderful place out here where you have so much activity and marine life and the shrimp boats and all these little inlets and harbors and the bayous in this part of the country. Very, very interesting. Now, remember last week we left off just underpainting, blocking in, and we're still doing a little of that. All of our programs begin with blocking in the painting. They don't look like much for the first few weeks, but as they progress, we begin to develop into a lot more sophisticated painting. Now, what we're going to do today is work a little bit more on the boats. There's a couple of boats here and this old shack here, or it's actually just a little, I don't know, a little boat dock with a cover on it where they probably worked on their boats and so forth, maybe brought their shrimp in. But this is a beautiful, beautiful setting right here. So let's go ahead now and get started working on the boat. Now, notice this boat is white. Well, I want to change the color. Now, that's the artistic license and the option that we have as artists, is we can do whatever we want to. Well, I would like to make a boat that's got a red bow to it, and the base of the boat here will be red. Because we have a lot of greens in this painting, I think red would be a nice contrast. Not only that, but it is the complement, of course. So now let's concentrate on getting a red color, and let's go down here with our palette knife and let's mix a little bit of our this is our red. Now this, by the way, what we're mixing here is for the shadowed part of the boat. So take a little dab of red and a little touch of purple and just darken the color just like this. All right, that's the darker shade. See, it's almost a maroon color. Now, you're going to probably need a little bit of the cadmium red light for the brighter red. Now, the red that I use right now in the oils is this Grumbacher red. It's a deep red, but I'm going to use the cad red light for the lighter red. So you're going to have two shades of red there, okay? Now, I want you to take your number 6 sable brush. Now remember, we're working with these water mixable oils. This is an incredible, incredible thing. All you need is a little water, or you can use some of the alkyd. This is the alkyd painting medium. Works beautiful for making it a little bit more creamy, and it makes it dry a little faster. Okay, let's take this. Now I'm going to put this here so I can see it. And starting right here in the back part of the boat where it's going to be in shadow, okay, because the sun's coming this way, just take a little touch of your dark red mixture. Now, if you hear a lot of noises out here, it's because we're up in one of these little harbors where there's a lot of activity. There's a lot of boats coming in and out. The shrimpers are repairing their boats because the shrimp season starts here in another month or so. We have the birds just having a great time out here. Okay, this will be the shadow right there, so we block that in. Okay. Now at the base of the boat, right here like this, now remember we have part of a dock right here, okay? Now this is a little more tedious than some of the work we've done before. Now this is another boat that's right beside this one. It's a little work boat. It's a boat just like a little small rowboat that they probably use to create, to do work on the side of the boat because it'll float around in the water easily. Okay, now see, I'm taking this like that, and I'm blocking in that part of the boat, about halfway up. Then rinse your brush, and now we're going to go right to the cadmium red light. Now, if you want to add a little bit of water to it to thin it down, don't hesitate. Just add a little bit though, mix it in good, or like I said, you can use the alkyd. Usually I don't use the alkyd unless I've got large areas like we did last week, you know, the sky, the sand, big piles of paint, where especially if it has a lot of white in it. Okay, now we're going to paint the front of the boat here, like this. This is a fairly large boat, by the way. It's not a small boat. Many of these shrimp boats are very large. And just come across here. Don't blend them together yet, because you want to keep your color fairly clean. Now we're doing a little bit more, you might say a little more detail work than we're used to doing in these programs. But I wanted to let each of you know that if you want to do that, you can. And take your little steady rest. And be sure you get this squared up good. Okay. Now you can kind of gently blend the two colors, the two values together, the dark one and the light one. Because it's going to be a little lighter above and a little darker as it gets down towards the base of the boat. So you can see a darker shadow, then it gets a little lighter. Now, this little fishing boat here that's in the front here, it can have a different color altogether. I'd rinse my brush out if I were you. And actually in the picture here, it's a dark sort of a moss green, but I don't think that would look really good with this boat. So let's go in here with just rinse your brush out. And let's use some of this gray color that we used in the sand for the shadow. Let's block it in with that. And then we'll make maybe a white boat out of it, because there's a lot of these little white fishing boats around here. Okay, it goes right to the edge of the water. Now I'm going to switch to my little round sable. This is a number 6 round sable. Take just plain white, just pure white now. And just block in this part of the boat right there. And blend this up like this. See, I'm kind of blending these. This is a fairly long little rowboat here. Now we'll settle it down in the water later. Just get it. Okay, see, it's whiter there and it's a little bit darker as it goes up, because it's gonna, as these boats curve, it'll be into the shadow there. Okay, now I'm going to take my script brush and I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue and a touch of purple, a little touch of burnt sienna, just a little dab of that color. We're going to create the darker inside part of the larger boat and the smaller boat there. Try to get this mixed here a little bit. All right, inside here you're going to see a little dark shadow. And don't make it too wide. I almost got it too wide there. You're only going to see it where you see the inside of the boat. And then up here, you'll see the inside of the boat slightly. So this will be a little darker right there. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and block in while I have this color on my brush. I'm going to block in some doors and windows. There's a door right here. And a window here. Window here. And then there's another door here. Like I said, this is a fairly large shrimp boat here. Probably about 40 feet long, maybe 50. Okay, there you get the doors. Now, I'm going to go back to my round sable, and we're going to make the top of the boat white like the small boat, but we'll trim it in the red. Almost all these boats, have a little trim on them, and usually whatever this part is, that part will be be trimmed also. Now, let's take the gray color that we used for the sand, and just like we did on the smaller boat here, this is the back of the cabin, and it's a gray color because it'll be in shadow. So you just kind of block that in there like that. Okay. And then I put just a little bit of this color at the base of the cabin like this. Then I want you to take the white paint this part of the boat, paint this part here, and just work right around your doors and windows. You can add a little touch of water from time to time here if you need to. Don't be afraid to do that. Okay, now after you've kind of blocked in the basic shape of your cabin there, there's a shadow that shows that there's a roof on here, and it sticks like this. Put a light, sort of this gray shadow, see, and it connects to the roof there, but it sticks out a little bit beyond the front of the boat or the cabin. In fact, it goes out there quite a ways. We will put a little, like I said, a red highlight there to outline it, but right now it's just simply a shadow, like that, okay? Now then, on top of the boat, there's all kinds of little things. I don't know what all's up here, but you know, there's just stuff. And so what I'm gonna do is just take this grayish color and just put little smudges, little strokes to create the shapes and forms of objects. Could be sometimes they'll stand up there, they've got rigging up there, they've got all kinds of things. Now we'll highlight that some more later, but right now that's all you need to do. Okay, now in the back of the boat also, there's stuff. There's the boxes. They have, I guess they have boxes, you know, where they put the shrimp. They have to put them on ice, of course, so they have to have these big ice boxes here. And there's all kinds of interesting things. There's coils of rope and just all kinds of neat stuff. So put some nice dark little shapes, little round shapes, little square shapes, just anything. Little poles sticking up. Now, like I said, we'll put all of the details here. The bugs are starting to bite now, so we have to be kind of watching out for those. Now, right behind the boat here, this is part of the dock, part of the harbor. Take this same dark color and mix a little bit of this gray with it. And right in through here, I want you to suggest things like poles, posts. Again, there could be barrels, telephone poles, poles that they hang things on, you know, to stretch their nets out on. Just a lot of different and various things here. Creates a little bit of drama, a little bit of interest. Now, see how interesting that looks? It just really adds a nice touch of character to the painting. Now, don't put too much up into the trees yet, because we have to highlight those before we put all of the details in there, okay? But now we're going to go to the roof. Now, this roof of this building is interesting because it's kind of rusty. And if you'll take your number 6 flat brush, your sable, let's take a little bit of burnt sienna, maybe a little orange, and a little bit of white or this tan color that we use for the sand, just to lighten it slightly. Now I want you to dry brush the top of it like this. Okay, I'm going to come across here and just kind of clean up the front of it there, make more of a straight edge. See, it's kind of a rusty color. And then what you'll do here, you'll take little dabs of white, just little dabs of white. And you'll put little streaks in like this. Okay, now, see the little dabs? Little short choppy strokes. Oh, this kind of suggests the old corrugated metal roofs. And you want it to look a little rough. It's not a real smooth roof, okay? Okay, now once you get the roof kind of blocked in there and you've got a little character to it, then we'll block in the underneath part here, and that'll be in a little darker color. And I want you to use your same gray color, but just add a little umber or sienna and purple to it, and get a nice dark color. And right underneath in here, I'll just streak it occasionally like this. The color should be a little different than what you had there. You don't want it to be the same color. It's more of a true brown. But I want you to add some white as you go. Now you want this to be streaked because this is an old wooden shed type building. So you got to do this with a little bit of white. I'm only going down about this far, and then there's part of the dock in front of it with some railing and some posts and things there that kind of hold it up. But you just take the white and you streak in with this, see, so you don't, it's not so dark. Okay, so like this. Now I'm going to add some white to it. Okay, see how we're doing that? That creates the look of old wood and sort of a okay, now I really like the way that looks. It looks just like old wood. Now when you have that color in your brush, this would be a good idea to go ahead and kind of reflect this in the water. See, I'm dry brushing this in the water, just kind of allowing some of that brownish color to come down. This will create a much wetter look eventually to the water, because you're going to have to reflect it in there anyway. So just like this. Just dry brush it right on down into the water and go on over about right to there with it. Okay, that's good. Now switch to your number 6 sable brush, and let's take some of this brownish color that we were just using for that and add some more white to it, make it a little bit lighter. Sort of almost a tan color, I guess you might say. And we'll block in the lake, the dock. And I'm not going to make it too dark. I want to make it kind of light because you already have some good contrast. But this area right across here, see, straight across like this. Come across like that, creating sort of a flat edge. And you want to do the same thing here. touch more water in my mixture so it'll be a little creamier, a little smoother, a little easier to blend across. Okay, now you get that straight across, then you go ahead and use this same color to sort of accent the posts underneath that hold it up. So I'm just putting little posts along here, just suggestions of the posts there that look like the dock, the part that's holding up the dock. Okay, just keep coming right on across. You don't have to be real straight or real perfect with this, and the reason is because these old docks, I'm telling you, man, it's amazing that they're even standing up the way they look over here. It looks like they could just fall any minute. Okay, but you see now, you got the support post there. And then right up here, you take some of this tan color and you put some little highlights up and down here to create the part of the dock right here. Now what this is there's a part of a, it looks kind of like a wall of just boards, but it's a very light wall. It's sort of a tan color. You can't really see it too well in this picture here, but there's a wall there, and I think what that is where they came up. It looks like a big open thing where they threw the shrimp in maybe or something. I don't know what it is, but it's just a big tan colored wall, and it's a good contrasting color against this thing here. Now notice I put the tan in there, but I'm going to come back with some darker colors, maybe just some burnt umber or a little blue and burnt sienna. I use that mostly. And put some vertical strokes right in between here like this. Mostly to add contrast and interest and continuity. Okay, I like the way that's beginning to look there. That's really sharp. Now on top of the walkway here, you want to take some, you might want to mix up a little dab of this. In fact, it'd be a good color to have handy. Just take some white, and with some of this mud that's in it, and a touch of yellow, just sort of tint this. Okay, just a touch of yellow to sort of tint this. It's a very light color. You can add a little bit of this alkyd painting medium to make it a little creamy, but the water works just as well if you mix it real well. But just remember, the water evaporates out, and then after a while it reverts back to its thick original oil state. So you know, you have to put a little more in it once in a while if you're going to mix a pile and leave it. Okay, and get a nice sort of a light yellowish color. Now I'm going to take my script brush now. I'll rinse it out here. And I'm going to be kind of careful, but I'm going to start putting some little highlights on top here, like right here where this white strip is. This will be sort of the top of the deck on the boardwalk. Okay, like that. Now see, all these little things you start doing here is going to add a lot of character to this, okay? Now I'm going to take this light and I'm going to continue across here, but notice what I'm doing. I'm making little lines that are kind of coming at an angle. Now this is the actual part of the dock that's in front of this little wall here. Now I know it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, all these things I'm telling you, because I'm here, I'm seeing it, and you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, there's no way I can follow this. And perhaps you can't really follow this, okay? My point here is not to really get you to paint exactly what I'm painting, but to have some indication on how to use these paints when you're on location. You may be able to use your own thing, you know, your own painting. You may have your own photograph of an old boat dock or some shrimp boats or something. Now notice here, I put a little front, a little highlight right there so you can see it coming forward, so it creates a three-dimensional effect there. It's kind of fun to do this kind of stuff. And then I'm going to highlight the top edge of this little wall here just by streaking like this. Then you'll come back later with details of little dabs of color like green and red and orange and yellow and blue, because there's so many neat little things laying around. Buckets and barrels and ropes and things like that that create so much interest. Now right underneath the overhang of this building here, well, I want to put a little bit of a darker shadow. Just take pure purple with a touch of burnt sienna, purple with sienna in it. Like this, and put a nice dark shadow right underneath there. This really helps to three-dimensionalize this. Okay, that makes the roof like it's sticking out. And then when you have that same color on your brush, let's go ahead and put in, say, a door. There's a door to this little building right there. And a couple of windows. And by using this dark bluish purple, you can actually see the darkness, the contrast really stands out. You would think the opposite, but it does. It's dark on dark. But if this is a different color of dark, it stands out really, really nicely. And there's probably another window. There's quite a few windows, in fact, along here. Well, as usual, we're about out of time, so we're going to have to stop for today. I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of detail that we've been doing on this painting. It's been a lot of fun for me, and if you like the program, please call your local station. Let them know how much that keeps us on the air, okay? God bless you, stay inspired, and we'll see you again real soon on another Inspiration of Painting. Now remember, last week we left off trying to block in some of this stuff here on this little shrimping section of this painting. There's a little inlet, you know, back into little I don't know, I guess they call them the bayous. You can see all these little operations where the shrimpers have their boats and their docks. It's really exciting. We did work a little while here. Now we're going to immediately go up and do the highlighting on our trees, because we have a lot of detail work that goes up in here that will finish this section of the painting. So that has to be done right now. So let's go down here to our palette, and you see I'm still working with the same palette because I like to keep my colors mixed together here so I don't have to remix them all the time. And of course, the way we do the paintings for the program is we do them in succession so that I'm not waiting 1 week at a time like you are. So my paints are still mixed out here. Okay, what we need to highlight with here, since the sun's coming in from the left-hand side, is a very soft, sort of a subtle yellowish green. Now what I'm going to use is a little bit of white, not too much, a little bit of this phthalo yellow green. Now this is a new color that we've added to the palettes, phthalo yellow green. White with a little phthalo yellow green, and then I'm taking a little bit of the sand color that we had there and I'm mixing in with it too. And that kind of creates more of a warmer, softer highlight color. So I don't know what this color is, but it's kind of interesting. That's all I could tell you. You can add a little bit of the alkyd painting medium. I dip in there and get a little touch of the alkyd so that it's a creamy color. It's real easy to use this away. Now, all the noise you hear in the background are shrimp boats being worked on. We're just about a month ahead of the actual shrimp season, so there's a lot of shrimpers here working on their boats, and it's kind of fun to see them and talk to them and understand a little bit about what's going on down here in this part of the country. Now, take your number 6 bristle brush, and remember, we try to get the end of it flattened out so you can, in each spot, see how I'm flattening the brush out there? That kind of creates a fluffy end to the brush. Don't hesitate to get it really completely full circle like this, okay? Then take a little bit of this green color we just mixed, and very gently and very carefully, let's just highlight the top edge of these. See, I'm just barely touching. Now, kind of create the gentle, soft edge here As you come in here, gently work your way down, making sure these have good shape, good form. Now we're going to come back, of course, and highlight the rest of the painting so it'll have the same intensity as this, but we have to go ahead and finish this since we're going to have things up in front of it. So remember, anytime you highlight something in the background, generally speaking, you're going to have to put the final highlight on fairly quickly in order for you to be able to put things in front of it. Like in this case, we got the mast of the boat, a lot of odds and ends that go up above. Okay, and then come over here, do the same thing here. Now notice I haven't really had to reload my brush because I had a good initial loading of color in there. Now I'm going to reload just a little bit. Come over here. Just sort of gently highlight these. Don't get carried away with it. Just enough to create interest. All right, now we're moving along here just fine. Now on the shoreline here, while we're working, I want you to take just a little bit more of this, just plain phthalo yellow green, and just kind of smudge a little highlight right along the edge there, and then you can kind of flip it up if you want to kind of make it look a little bit more like grass. See I'm doing this here? Just go along there and soften this. You don't want a real bright edge so much, but you do want a clean, soft edge of color. Okay, just a touch more here. Okay, see how we're doing that? Okay, now we've kind of got most of our background settled in place. Let's go ahead and begin some of the detail work. Now this is a little bit, I'm breaking the rules a little bit here, but you know, rules are sometimes meant to be broken. I'm going to start putting some of the detail work in here that makes this so interesting. And then we're going to come over to this side of the painting and put a couple of things in here to kind of balance it. We're going to save the foreground of the painting for the last 2 or 3 programs because there's a lot of work that has to be done here, and then we'll put the final highlights on. So right now, let's go back up in here, and you'll see here we've got the rigging, the masts, we've got the nets, we've got all kinds of little details that go in place over here. Well, first of all, there's a little area right here that's kind of unfinished, and that's going to have to be a dark area. So I want you to take any brush you want to at this point that's small. I'm going to use my little number 6 sable. I'm going to take a little blue and purple, and a touch of red, okay, not too much, but a little touch of red, just a cad red light there. And I'm going to go ahead and paint right down to the water's edge this color. And then I'm going to blend this color right on into the water. Like that. Now I'm going to take a little bit of this white paint that we have here. I'm going to reflect this little fishing boat in the water just by doing this. See, following the shape of the boat. So you've got to be able to get these reflections in there. Now don't blend it perfect, just keep it kind of swishy, see, so you can see the reflection of the boat there. Then we're going to do the same thing with the big boat. We're going to get the red that comes behind this one. Okay, so now you've got that one in there. Now we take the cadmium red light, and right behind this boat now, you'll see the bow of this boat here, coming out right behind this boat. I'm going to sketch in sort of the angle of this so that I don't get myself in trouble. And it kind of comes back in like this. Now take the red, and dry brush this in where the boat is, right there. Okay, see, but it's right behind this one, but because you're doing that, it looks like that boat's now reflected into the water against that nice contrast. Rinse your boat very well, or rinse your brush very good. Take a little bit of white now, and just sort of suggest the cabin. You don't have to make it real, an exact duplicate, because that doesn't matter, but just get a little bit of the shape of the cabin here in the water. Using sort of a dry brush stroke. And remember, you've got the gray color for the back of it, so you need to put that in here. You'll see that right there. And then you kind of suggest a couple of doors and windows. And remember, when you're putting reflections in, they have to be a similar color, but they should be a little bit lighter value and not quite so clear. You know, you always kind of smudge to create that little bit of a rippled effect. Like for instance, when we do the door here in this thing, it's just a little smudge. You don't really have to get too carried away with it. But see, by creating that little bit of a reflection there, it adds a lot of character to the painting. And then you've got these little dark smudges in here that I don't know anything about what they are exactly, except they're just little boxes and barrels and buckets and things like that. Then there's a little bit of a shadow of the inside of the boat here, a little darker, and then inside this one. Okay, like that. And that kind of gives it a nice little flavor. You can really see the reflections in the water now. Of course, when we put the white ripples on there, it'll change dramatically. Okay, now let's take a little bit of red, just a cadmium red light, and let's go ahead and put some of the trim work on the boat so that you can see it begin to develop here. There's a little trim on the front edge here. That. And maybe on the top of it here, there's a little bit of trim. Go there. So just put a little bit. You don't need much, just enough to sort of accent, highlight, and tie this thing together, okay? Also, while you got some of the red on your brush, they've got a couple of life tubes, you know, the little inner tubes hanging up here. There's all kinds of things. Just put these little smudges of highlight here. Maybe just a little touch of color, just to kind of create the effect of other objects up there. In fact, the phthalo yellow green would be a perfect color to insert just a few little different subjects. Like maybe there's a barrel or a bucket or some boxes, just by adding color. This is what we call accenting, and one of the most important things about accenting in a painting is that you may not have to identify it as any particular object, but what it does is it ties the painting together, creating interest. It repeats some of the greens, it repeats the reds, it repeats the blues, whatever colors you have in there. Okay, now see, once you have this established, you've got some color in there, you can see the thing really starting to come together nicely. Now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and get the large, tall things on each side of the boat here that they use to drag the nets with, and let's go ahead and take a little burnt sienna with a little ultramarine blue, a little water to make it a little creamy, and right behind the cabin here we've got these tall lines. These lines, you have to use your steady rest really to get a good feel for it, okay? But you can do that easily. On each side of the cabin you'll see these. That. I'm putting a cross piece right there. Okay, now just keep moving around here until you get just like you want it. There's so much stuff here. There's all kinds of supports, rigging, there's antennas, there's all kinds of stuff here. And you have to, you know, accuracy would be important, I suppose, if you were doing a commission for someone and their boat was just exactly a certain way and they wanted everything in there. But what we try to do from an artistic point of view is what we call artistic accuracy, and it's really what's pleasing to the eye. It's not always what's so visually correct, but it's what's artistically correct, all right? I'm going to make these poles a little taller. All right, you get those in there like that. Now I want you to reflect them very gently in the water. See I'm doing it? And all the way to the shore here. You'll see these reflected all the way up here to the shore. And even on the shore, go ahead and reflect it because the sand is wet. That's one of the things that you create wetness with. Now there's some little dark values there. You want to reflect those. Everything you put above, you put in the water, okay? Very, very important. And then I promise you, this water begins to look wet. See, already it's starting to look wetter and wetter and wetter. It's becoming more interesting with every stroke that you put on. A little shadow right there we have. Kind of define the edge of the boat. Okay, now I'm going to put some of the other pieces of rigging that go in here. And you just have to start putting things in according to what you see. And sometimes you can leave a thing or two out. You can create your own little suggestions of details depending on what it is you're trying to do here. It's a negative space problem. Remember, we've talked many times about negative space. And negative space is the area that surrounds an object. Now here we've got some poles coming out that will hold the nets. Okay, they come that way. Now I'm continually using the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna with a little water to thin it down. Then on the front of the boat here, while I got this on hand, there's a little V-shaped support for the anchor, and then the anchor sits there. Then there's a pulley and a wheel here that kind of holds the anchor in place with the rope on it. Okay, now we're going to keep adding the details. I think this is one of the key components to this painting, is all the little odds and ends that make it work. Can continue the process of outlining and highlighting and okay. Now it's important that these poles are fairly solid in color and they're fairly thick. Okay, now also right here they have on each side of them sort of a, and on the top of them here they look kind of like a ladder. And it's going to be real hard for you to do this unless you have a lot of experience doing this, because what you need to do is suggest it by just barely touching and barely putting little thin lines. See, just quickly like this. These are horizontal lines that come across like that, and then down here on this one. It's quite likely that you can't see every little thing we're doing here on the program because it is a little bit finely tuned, but that's okay. You're understanding now that there are a lot of ways to make this work. Okay, now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make sure that anything else that I have up here we have reflected, like these two angled poles here. You know, just kind of wiggle your brush to create the suggestion of them in the water. And pretty soon, you take your brush now, the end of it, and what I normally do is take it and scratch across the surface like this. And what this does, if your paint's still wet like mine is, this also kind of blurs it, but it also creates some small little scratches of highlight that really give the water a nice little feeling of movement. And I do this all through the water like this, see? If your paint's still fairly wet, you can do this right up against the water's edge there, up against the boat and the shoreline here. It creates a soft highlight. This is a wonderful technique. We use this for doing bark on trees or anytime you're trying to create a little texture. This is a wonderful technique. Just go through and scratch like this. What this does is it pushes the paint out, creating little textures, and makes the water look even more wet. You see how much wetter that looks already just because of that? Now, you need to take a little of this tan color that the building was made of and reflect some of those in the water. Okay, like that. And anything that needs to be reflected, you reflect it, like the front of this little section here. These all add to the character of the building. Okay. Now, little by little, it's starting to three-dimensionalize. It's getting better and better. Now, on the front of the boat, I want you to take pure white, just pure white, and I want you to highlight the front of it like this. And as it comes back, it blends itself into the red. And now I'm going to switch to, I think my little flat sable here, my number 6 or number 4 flat sable. And pull this light back like this. Because it's going to be a little bit lighter at the front there. In fact, if you want to put a little orange on the front of it, the orange will give it more of a sunlit effect as well. And then it gradually goes back into the red color. Okay, see, like that. Now on the ridge, the top of the boat, there's a highlight, and this is where we start trimming this thing out. Now you take the white, the little water, you got to get it kind of creamy so that your brush will move. Okay, now on top of the boat, angle this however you want to. You put a thin highlight right on top to accent this. See there? Now that three-dimensionalizes this a little bit. Now we're going to go through this whole section of the painting and begin this process of accenting. The back side there, on the top of this little boat there. In fact, this little boat here might have a rope down here, and you can have it there. I think there's a post or two here that pier posts that need to come up there. Now see, that adds a nice contrast against the boat there. It's a beautiful, beautiful little area. This part of the painting is really shaping up nicely. Okay. You can also do this anywhere else where you want a little more of a snap of highlight, like on the roof line here. In the wood there, wherever you want a little snap of highlight or just a little bit of sunlight, just take the white and a little thin sliver will create the suggestion of sun. Now there will be an occasion where you have to let this dry a little bit before you can do too much, because when you have a real wet background, sometimes it gets hard to create a thin line, okay? Right here, on the back side of this boat, you want a little bit of highlight. Okay, in the background here, you might want to put a little thin sliver of light on this stuff that you created back here, poles and posts and who knows what all's back here. See, that all adds to the character of the painting. Then take the white and let's put a white ridge right underneath here. All these boats have this little ridge on them. Comes back like this, all the way back to the back of the boat, and in fact it goes across that part of the boat. So now you see the boat, the painting, the whole thing is now starting to come alive. It's so neat. Of course, we do have all the lines and the cables and the nets to go in there. We're going to do that next week, but now I want to get just a couple more details over here. Take a little bit of burnt sienna and a little bit of blue, if you would there, and let's put a couple of more poles here. I know there's a couple of telephone poles and a couple other things here that are interesting. I'm not sure what they're for or what they do, but it's not important. The important thing is it adds a little contrast, kind of get your eye back into the painting just a little bit. And then you can start doing the detail work now. In fact, I'm going to give you a homework assignment. Between now and our next session, I'm going to suggest that you go through now and begin doing the detail work that best suits your painting. See, like for instance, underneath these planks of board here, I need shadows to kind of three-dimensionalize the wood. So I take my umber and my purple, a little blue maybe, and I create a little shadow underneath each one of those sections, and that creates three-dimensional form. See there, like this. Okay, it's very, very important. You can do the same thing with these support poles here. Okay, little dark values versus the light. That's the contrast that is so important to any painting. Contrast, light against dark. That's what makes a section like this work. The white boat against the red against the green, and all the lights and darks against each other creates tremendous interest in the painting. Now, let me share with you a couple things that we need to talk about before we end the program, because we're just about to run out of time. Next week when we meet now, we're going to not spend too much time here. We are going to put some of the other finishing details here, but we're going to move over to the left side, and I got a great big post that goes here, or part of an old broken dock that goes out into the water that your eye will come into. I would like for you to maybe sketch that in, or have some idea on your own maybe where you want to go with it. We may begin the process of getting some of the underpainting for the weeds or do some more finishing work on the sand. So what we want to do now is be very careful now as we plan this painting, because we want to keep our focal point here. So whatever we put over here has to get your eye into this part of the painting, because then we're going to put a couple of people standing around working on their boats or walking on the dock. Now I will say this, it's a good idea to try to pre-mix plenty of this sand color. So if yours is dried out or you've lost it, remember to pre-mix your sand color from the mixture that we used on the first painting, okay? So I hope you've enjoyed the program today. It's been a lot of fun. I know we've been stuck on a lot of little details, but I think it's kind of good for a change, do something different, okay? Well, God bless you, stay inspired. Hey, if you like the program, call your station, let them know how much that keeps us on the air. Keep painting, and we'll see you again real soon on another Inspiration of Painting. Now, what we're going to do in today's program, remember we spent most of the time in the last couple of weeks just kind of working in this section. Now we're going to move over to this section and do a little more work in the foreground. And what I'm going to do is take some of these old posts here, these old, I don't know what they call them, they're pier posts that you set up there, pilings. And on this side of the painting, there are some right out here beside me, and you can't see them, but there's some boats docked up to some pier posts here, and they've got the ropes tied around them. There's quite a few of them out here. And what I'm going to do is take the end of my palette knife here, I'm going to scratch in where I think I want these to go. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want you to see firsthand how it's going to look. Now please keep in mind something, it's very important. These posts now start from the shore and they go way out into the water, and the whole idea here is to get our eye to come into the painting like this. All right, so I'm going to scratch in a pole there, and then another one here. Make this one a little taller. Okay, we have the second one here, and we'll probably have part of a larger one that comes off the canvas over here that you can't really see too much except sort of the end of it. Then let's say a third one or a fourth one out here that maybe is a little taller. And then there may be a support or a brace post that comes out like this. And this is just sort of part of the old dock, okay? Now, take your knife while you have it and scrape off any paint under there that's wet. See how I'm doing this? Okay? So that you'll have a little drier background to work on. So scratch it like so. Now, any of the noises that you hear around here, please remember we're out here on the Gulf Coast where the shrimpers are getting ready for shrimp season. They're just a few, 3 or 4 weeks away now. Okay, now after you've kind of sketched these in over here on the left-hand side, I've got my study here. All the posts kind of have the same look, except they're just different widths and heights, and some are more worn out than the others. If you watched the program where we did the pelican in the acrylic paintings, you saw the old posts and the wood really come to life with some of the techniques for painting wood grain and so forth. Well, it's not quite so elaborate on here because these are just sort of there as eye stoppers. But now I want you to take your number 6 bristle brush, and I'm going to rinse it out because I had some green in it there. Now let's take a little bit of burnt sienna with a little touch of ultramarine blue, and let's get a nice dark color there. Add a little water to sort of thin it. In fact, I think I'll add a little bit of the dioxazine purple here. Now block in this first post back here, and I want you to kind of lean it just a little bit. Like this. And then this one. And then this one. And then this one, which is a fatter one, and actually it's the one that's closest to us, so we meant to make it a little taller. You can't really see the whole post because part of it's off the canvas. But then you got this one here. Now let's get it blocked in. And see, by allowing some of the background colors to blend in, you create a real nice soft wood color. Okay, then you just gently ripple this in the water like we did over there with the boat, see, to get the reflection. See, I'm just gently rippling like so, just a little bit there, don't overdo it. Same thing with this one. Just gently ripple it in the water. Same thing with this one. Okay, that adds a little bit of a reflective. Now what this does is you can see now it starts pulling your eye. Even though you notice it, when we get finished with it, your eye will just pull in here. It'll end up back here because in the background here, there's some other things in here, some little broken pieces of dock. There's a whole bunch of little docks here. We're just going to add enough detail that it'll make your eye move on across here. A couple of larger trees we may put in there, I'm not sure yet. But anyway, the whole focus here is to get your eye back to this section right in through here. Okay, now on the side over here we have a brace post or a brace board that comes out like this. In fact, there's probably a couple here, I think. Okay, that kind of gets your mind or your eye to wandering more out that direction. So you have a couple of pieces that come out like that. Then we'll highlight these here in a minute, and you'll see how well this fits into the scheme of things. Okay, so now take your flat sable, your little flat red sable here. Now what I did between sessions is, and you already had some mixed up, but I just mixed up a little more. Down here on my palette I've taken white with a touch of yellow, got a nice creamy white yellowish color, and I put some a little bit of our alkyd painting medium that we're using to kind of make it a little creamy, a little, it just really works well. Also helps to make it dry a little faster too. Okay, now I'm going to take this yellowish white on my brush here, and I'm going to put the top of the dock on here. Okay, now I'm going to have to go kind of in between the poles, but see, I'm putting these strokes like this that follow the angle of the dock there. Okay. Now this is nothing that you have to be really careful about or really, you would say very, very accurate about, because this is only fill-in material here. Doesn't really mean anything other than it helps hold your eye in the painting. It's very good. Now take this and highlight the edge of each post a little bit. Just sort of dry brush, a quick swish, see, straight down in a vertical movement, right down like that, creating a soft highlight. Same thing here. Then on top of these support braces that go across here, whoops, I'm going to wipe that off because I'll stick my hand right in the middle of it. There's a little highlight right on top where the sun will come through, but now it won't be behind each post because that'll be in shadow. So just put a highlight light like that. And there may be a little highlight underneath here. The sun may not reach the top part of it, but the bottom part of these posts you might reach a little highlight like that. Okay, after you kind of suggested that, then I got to clean up my brace across here because I came down with my highlight there. I'll let the board stick out a little further. I think that adds a little character to it. Okay, now I'm just trying to make sure everything kind of a little more refined. Now this is a neat little section of the dock with the water there. Take the end of your brush now and scrape a little highlight between the dock, the post, and the reflection. Now remember we did this over here and it creates such a nice, I don't know, it just really makes the water look finished. I don't know what that does. It just creates a highlight. It kind of blurs and blends the water, gives it a nice feeling. Okay, now I'm going to suggest now at this point that we go back to our sand. And now this yellowish white mixture that I have up here is going to be very important for this sand because we want a real strong light to hit the sand. And then when we get this all lit down here, we'll use that same highlight color to finish highlighting different areas of the painting so the whole thing has a more of a sunlit effect. So what I want you to do at this point is take your number 6 bristle brush, rinse it out real good, get any mud or dirt or any other color in there that you don't really want in there that doesn't truly belong in there out. Just get it out. It's one of the few times that we actually want a cleaner brush. Now we're not going to paint this solid. What we're going to do is we're going to take the yellow and you use it to create more of a highlight. See, I put it on kind of thick. Don't blend it in too much because see now mine is a little wetter than yours, so it's going to blend in a little bit more. So I'm being very careful. I'm putting it on very loose, a little thick, and I'm not blending too much. This kind of highlights the sand, gives it a little bit more of a sunlit glow. And especially along the water's edge there. See, I'm leaving some of the other colors come through, but I gotta definitely get this here. Okay, see how much more subtle that is and how much more lit that is? I just love the way that looks. Just gently pile it up here, a little over here, a little more out on the actual water's edge there. I think that's a nice thing. Kind of gives a little bit of a sparkle if you kind of drag your brush along the edge like this. See, I'm dabbing it, put it on kind of thick. That makes it look sort of like the foam. You know how when the water washes up, it creates this little foamy effect. This is kind of what you get when you dab it on like this. You create that nice little. See, I'm just dabbing. Okay, that's a nice effect right there. Okay, just be very careful not to overdo it. Now, if you've gotten some of this yellow on here, now all of a sudden we're going to change colors. Now we've got this sandy color, this gray color, but we're going to change it now. Now I have it already mixed here, that gray color. I'm going to take about half of it, scoot it over, and I'm going to add some burnt sienna to it. I'm going to add a teeny touch of orange to it and a little bit of yellow to it. I'm going to mix this because now we want to go from a grayish color to a much warmer color. And I'm going to take a little bit of this alkyd painting medium. Now this has to be shaken up real well each time you use after it's set for a little while because it settles and separates and you want to get it all back together. So I'm going to take a little bit of the alkyd. I'm going to work into this. Now see, this is turning out to be sort of a, oh gosh, this is a color I've never seen before, I think. It's an interesting color. It's kind of a tannish brown. It's very pretty though. It's a color that we're after for the sand, and I'll show you here what I'm talking about. Now remember we mentioned earlier that the shadow from the sand can range from a bluish, purplish to a tan, brownish color. And some of these colors you cannot buy. You just have to mix them. There it is. That's just exactly what we want right there. I'm going to put that on. I'm going to take my number 6 bristle brush, the one we just got through using. Now after we've kind of established the color that we're after, now we'll just take your number 6 brush here, and let's go ahead on the back side now, intermingle a little bit of this brown with this gray, but be careful not to completely change the color. The gray has to be in there to give this the shading that we need, but you've got to have the brown or this tan color in there to start giving it more of a warmer sandy color, okay, that we're going to use back here on the back side of the painting. See, especially when we get down in this area right in through here. Okay, see I'm coming along through here. Do a little bit of it back in through here. Not too much, but you want a little bit of that warmer sandy color. Just don't completely paint out your gray. And right up and through here, as we come closer to the shadow, or to the foreground, it gets more shadowed, and you turn into this color. And we may end up adding more purple to this. This is still just the underpainting, but we want it to be a little warmer as we come forward. See how I'm blending that in? Now I'm going to come all the way down in the foreground, all the way over here with this color. So let's work this in now. Don't be afraid of it. See, I'm not being real smooth. I'm being a little bit carried away with the movement. See, the movement's so important. You got to have this swishing movement. Then I'm going to show you how we blend the sand. Okay. Now, remember the light's coming this way, so occasionally pick up a little bit of your sand color, and you want to get some little drifts now. So you have the dark and the light now. So you start blending together, creating little highlights of sand that's drifted up against the piles of sand here. I'm going to take some of my blue gray, and I'm going to see, I got to have that in there. I've kind of got some of it out, so you mix that in with it a little bit, back in through here. Keep blending back like this, and then occasionally wipe your brush. Pick up a little bit of this yellow sunshine color, because that's what creates that drifted look. Okay, that gives it the sun. Okay, kind of blend this down in through here. Okay, see how soft and beautiful that's beginning to look? This is so exciting when you start really seeing and develop. A little there now. So you can kind of drift a little back on the back side. You know the sand's going to break through there and create some more little highlights on the back side. A little more here. So you want a little bit of movement in the sand now, especially when we get down in through here. Now this will change into a darker color. You put your brown tan color on, and you add a little bit of this purplish gray as you go. Back behind here is a nice Nice drift right there, see, as the sand comes down through here. And now begin mixing the two together a little bit. Just keep this corner kind of dark right back here, okay? Just like this. A little bit of the gray. Same thing back over here. Now you want to be able to see and the way you create the drift is you have a hook stroke or a comma stroke on the backside, and then you have a nice highlight on top of it. So wherever you have a little hook stroke, that's where you're going to have a highlight. When it comes back this way, then you're going to go the other way with the sunshine, the sand. See, like here, we'll hook it back this way, and we create a drift. Now, in your own studio, and if I were in my own studio working, I would spend a lot of time working the sand and the drifts, really paying attention to the way the wind would blow and how actually it creates the little piles of sand. It's a fun thing to look at. Boy, it's kind of like sculpture. When you look at nature out here and you look at the way the sand piles, it just looks like a piece of sculpture. It's so smooth and so carefully blended. It almost looks like it was formed by a hand that took the time to refine it. Nature is so beautiful. Okay. Now you see you've created some little swells of sand and so forth. You got a pathway more or less that goes into this painting, get you back up in here, your eye flows back here, hits this, comes back down, and when we get all the grasses and everything in here, this is going to be an outstanding study for you to go back and do some more work on or some takeoffs from this to do other paintings, okay? Now, a little more refinement work here just on the front of this where the sand is drifted. You want a good bright light right on top for sure. Like so. Okay, just little smudges, quick little smudges. Okay, now you may see a couple of drifts that are sort of simultaneous, side by side, like right here. You put a little. Maybe here, here. And that kind of looks like the sand's kind of creating these little ridges. That's a fun thing to do as well. So you need to get a little character in here. Okay, see how the sand is kind of drifted? Then you have the back side of it, you come back like so. Okay, now, after you've gotten all of this this part kind of blocked in, the next step now is for us to go ahead and plan how we're going to lay all of our grasses in. Now remember, we were looking at our photographs before, and you can see here now that the grasses have this sort of a golden brownish color, kind of a rust color almost. Well, one of the things that we want to create here is a good dark value underneath, okay? So we're going to go ahead and pre-mix that now, and we'll have it ready for next week when we get ready to start. So let's find us a clean spot on our palette here, if you would. We're going to mix the underpainting color, and then we'll mix a highlight color. Okay, now what you're going to do is take your burnt sienna, pretty good blob of sienna, take a little yellow, like this, a touch of purple, like this, about the size of a pea. Blend those together. You have your burnt sienna, you have a little yellow, and you have a touch of purple, Get that all blended together. This is almost the exact color that we need for the underpainting for these weeds, okay? Now this is going to be an exciting thing for you and a little bit of a challenge because you're going to have to be kind of loose and free. With the way this painting is developing here, these weeds and the stuff you're growing out here has to be loose and free. You can't just have a clump, a clump, a clump, and a clump. So we're going to sort of learn a little bit more about composition, about space, about the use of negative space, and all the different things that make a painting work, okay? So that's one of the key components for next week's lesson is how to compose your grasses in the foreground so that they don't conflict with the painting, but they add a lot of character and a lot of interest without taking your eye away from your main subject. Now, your color should be about like this. Let me put so you can see this up here against this white background. It's a very reddish color, which is very, very similar to the color that's underneath right back in there, okay? And then we'll use more of a golden highlight for the outer edge. Now, let me make a couple of points here that you need to know. Remember, we have a clump of grass here for sure. We already know that. That's a given, okay? We just got, and we're going to raise it up a little higher. We'll probably have some smaller individual ones that come down here. We also have a major clump over here that comes up and partially in front of this dock here, this old pier. So that's a given. Now, if you have a wet painting like I have, say you're doing yours sort of all at once, you need to scrape out underneath there the thick paint that's underneath there. So that's where I already have suggestions of where I'm going to put these. I'm going to scrape off the thick paint underneath those bodies, just like this. Okay, and this one here. Now, we will add lots of individual weeds, little sections, 1 or 2 or 3, and then we'll have the highlights and the shadows coming on the sand. Let's scrape this off, and this is for your main clumps, all right? Then we'll decide how to compose the smaller groupings later on to create a good composition. Now, once you've got this scraped off here, the next thing you're going to do, and you might want to play with this on your own, take your end of your palette knife and scratch in where some of these individual weeds, these little smaller clumps of just a handful of weeds will go, okay? And kind of play with it on your own to see if you can come up with a composition that will be pleasing to your eye. And let's just see how well it follows in line with what I'm going to do next week. Well, we're out of time. I want to thank you for joining us today. Call your station and let them know how much you like the program if you like it. God bless you. Stay inspired. We'll see you again real soon on another Inspiration of Painting. One of the things we're going to do now, remember last week we kind of scraped off where the basic clumps of grass is going to go. We've mixed up our mixture, which is that dark brownish umber or sienna color. And now what we're going to do is take our number 10 bristle brush. This is our number 10 bristle brush now. And working with these oils, these water mixable oils now, we have to concentrate on putting the paint on fairly thick and dry, okay? And we're going to swish up like this for the underpainting. Let me find one of these clumps here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here's a nice one here. Okay, you see the clumps? Okay, I'm going to pull in like this. First of all, just dip it straight into the paint. Now, by the way, in case you hear all this racket going on, remember we're down here just before the shrimp season starts, and all the shrimp boats that come in and out of these little harbors are being worked on right now. There's a lot of the crew out here working on their boats, fixing them up, getting them ready, because that's how a lot of these people make their living down here, and it's kind of interesting to see all the activity. Now, you take this brown color that we mixed up and you dry brush up like this. See how I'm dry brushing? It's a very simple stroke, but it's an effective, very effective stroke. But I'm kind of giving you just a little curve like this, just a little swish. Get it up a little higher. See how I'm doing that? And then of course we'll come out of this and highlight this. Now once you get this high enough that it kind of goes, slightly overlaps the edge of this dock right there. Okay, see how nice that is? Get a nice underpaint. That's the dark you see inside. We haven't got the golden yellowish color on top yet. Then we had a smaller clump right here. Okay. Now remember we talked last week about having to create these clumps of grass and brush and weed so that we have a pleasing eye flow. Okay, now that's the secret here, is to get an eye flow that's pleasing. We had like 3 or 4 basic clumps, and then we're going to add the others that will tie it together. But let's get the big clumps in first that we started with. Let's move over to the other side here. I have this taped down because sometimes the wind blows. I'm going to untape this now, I think, and move this over a little bit so I have a little bit more room to work on this side over here. And we take the same brush and the same technique like this on this side, and you just swish up, coming right out of these, where these little drifts were at. So you just swish up. See how it leaves sort of a dry brush stroke? That gives you some texture. That's so important. Now then you can see you have little pockets like this where you put little short strokes. See this little spot right there? Just a small one there. Little short dabs. Now there's a bigger dab here, or a bigger stroke here. Now we're going to spend most of our program just working on this grass. Now be sure that this clump here, now remember that you get it high enough that it covers the edge of this part of this boat dock here, okay, because it goes out here, and I've scratched in, you may not be able to see it, but I've scratched in a rowboat, just a small boat right here, and I'm thinking about, and I haven't made up my mind yet, but I'm thinking seriously about putting a small boat tied up with a couple of the ropes hanging down to hold it in place there. It may add a nice little bit of interest to the painting. I'm not real sure. Okay, now after you get the main clumps that we had already established in our mind, what I like to do is take my palette knife and go in here and scratch in like this, or if your paint's dry underneath, you can use a little piece of charcoal. And I sort of scratch in now where the other clumps are going to go. Now remember I asked you to go ahead and experiment with that a little bit, and as I put my clumps in, see if you and I had a similar idea where they should go. Well, I want you to notice something here that's very important. All grasses, bushes, and brush, artistically speaking now, flow in an eye flow. Even this, the way the sand's drifted, wherever the sand's drifted, you see these clumps of sand, these grasses. They overlap each other, they touch each other. Sometimes you see some little individual ones. Well, for instance, right here, you want to have this clump here that sort of comes up and overlaps this one. All right, so this is going to flow, but you can't just leave a clump here and a space, because what happens is you kind of cut your painting in half. And we've already done that somewhat by having this here and this open space here, so we've got to somehow get a connection here, okay, if we can. All right, so what I'm going to do here is put a clump, or maybe not just a clump, but a few large ones, tall ones, individuals, right here, that will kind of come up this ridge here. So you have a ridge there, you'll have, skip a space or two, and you have another smaller clump here. Then you have a middle-sized clump, then you get some individual ones here. Now, I'm not saying we won't have some down here that stick up, individual ones that kind of help overlap this section of the painting, but this now gives us a nice eye flow that keeps our eye moving without going off the canvas and creating some problems for us. So now, let's see. If you've got some thick paint there like I have, I'm going to put this right here so I can study it. I usually scrape off underneath just a little bit of the lower section so that the paint will be nice and clear when you put it on. Okay, that's a good thing to do. Then you go back to your brush again, your number 10 bristle brush. Go up like this. Okay, a clump there and a clump here. Notice I'm giving just a little bit of movement, a little freedom with this. Little small sections of it here and there. Now, there'll be some places you'll just drag out a little underpainting and you haven't even chose a spot, but it may help to tie in, you know, because you're going to have little areas like this right there that will kind of gently tie into this bottom part here. Okay, so I'm going up here like this. Now some of these little clumps can go down on the back side as well. Okay, just reload. I'm going to come over here. Now see, I'll look at a clump and I'll look at it and say, well, it doesn't look like it fits what I'm trying to do here. So if it doesn't, I may change the shape of it or I may add to it. For instance, here now, I don't want just a row of them. So now I may come out here and tie in a couple of small little clumps that will tie in. Don't want to go too far out because this brush didn't go right to the water's edge. It always was back on the shoreline where the sand's drifted, where it can take hold and take a good root system. Have a good root system. Now maybe a little here. Some that's kind of off the page, and this kind of helps break this up a little bit. And we'll have some nice tall ones coming in here. Kind of soften that. Now after you've done that part, then you take your number 6 bristle brush and you take your yellow white, the white color, the yellowish white, and remember we have it mixed here, that's white with a little touch of the cadmium yellow light. And you're going to drift the sand. Now just make sure that the little smudges are blended in now. So you just take this, this kind of keeps them settled down, keeps them from floating and hanging up in the air. So you just kind of tie them in to the ground by just smudging like this. Okay, see how we're doing this? Just kind of blend backwards, trying to tie the grass into the ground. Okay, now after you kind of settled them down and got all of them kind of blended in, now we're going to mix up our color. By the way, don't worry too much about the back of this. You can kind of blend these in a little, but you don't have too much to worry about there because it's mostly the front that you're going to see. Now let's go down to our palette and we're going to remix the highlight color. Now this is an interesting color because it's going to have to be very clean, very bright, and very cheerful. So let's take your palette knife now. Take your yellow, the orange, about equal amounts, and I want you to take a little bit of white, take some of your alkyd painting medium. Now I'm going to shake this up. Good habit to keep it shook up all the time because this stuff separates and you need to shake it so it all gets conformed together. Oops, don't want to lose that. Okay, now get this mixed really well. This is a nice orangish, yellowish color. It's beautiful. And if you get it nice and creamy like I'm doing here, then you'll create a wonderful effect. Now you're going to need your script brush for this, so get your script brush out. I'm going to add just a touch more yellow to it so it's not quite so orange, although I like the orange. More orange tone. Now remember I mentioned to you about mixing the alkyd in here, or even water for that matter. Be sure that you mix it very, very well. Okay, see how good I'm mixing? Okay. All right, now after you've mixed that, take your script brush now, and this is where you're going to have a lot of fun. Now this is going to be an exciting thing, somewhat repetitive, but just very, very important that you get to it. Now you take this, dip it straight in like this, hold your brush back, and begin this loose, free process of putting in the brighter highlights, okay? See, I can go kind of up and down. These kind of have little seed pods on them. So you can kind of scumble around inside here. And don't get real fat strokes, keep them kind of thin. Now we'll put one final accent highlight here that's got almost a pure yellow color. And now also notice I come down at the base here and I do a lot of overlapping to kind of help settle it down and make it look like it's coming right out of the sand there. Very important that you really do a lot of overlapping here. See how nice that looks? It's really beautiful, folks. If you just don't get in a hurry, and yet you have to use a quick stroke. I know that's contradictory, but my point here is you paint with a quick stroke, but take the time to develop the clump. If you have to go back through and create some more form or even scratch off a little bit, but see how I've left little pockets of dark and light that contrast each other. Just don't overwork it. I guess that's, if I could give you any words of wisdom or any little advice right now, please don't overwork it. I haven't used the 3 Ps in a while, so I think I will here. Don't piddle, play, or putter. Okay, now see how much I'm working on this? Even though I'm working quickly, I'm making quick strokes, I'm taking the time to make sure that it's developed properly, okay? It's very important. Now, come to the next clump, and just by virtue of the fact that they're close enough and you got to pull up above the underpainting, you will actually overlap your clumps, and that's what ties them together, okay? See how nice and tall I'm making these? You can even take the end of your brush and on an occasion you can just scratch in some highlights here if your painting is still wet. If not, it's not a big deal. But I like to do this once in a while because this also creates a nice little snap to it that you don't have otherwise. Now see what I'm doing here? I'm not staying just within the range of that clump of grass. I am actually moving out slightly, just a little bit out towards the edges, so that I can sort of tie it in with the sand. It becomes an integral part of the whole composition now. If you just make a clump of sand and a clump of grass and just follow that clump, it looks placed and like you planned it and planted it, and you don't want that. Everything has to take on a very spontaneous, free-flowing effect. See how nice and tall I'm making some of these? Now right in here is a nice spot for some small ones that sort of overlap each other. And coming down the coast here, also now you can begin to see the sand develop as it drifts, it creates, everything starts falling into line now. It's just really exciting to see how this develops. And even after you've painted for years, and I've been painting now for over 20 years, every time you do a painting, you find so much excitement because every painting's different. New things happen. Certain strokes you do will create an effect that you hadn't seen before, and something you'll add to your technique. I say in some places you're not getting a whole lot of color. You don't need it every time. Sometimes you're just moving the paint around. It's there, but you're creating texture and form and highlight and shadow. Just keep building now. This is a fairly repetitive, but it's a very important thing now, especially when you get through here, that you have plenty of overlap. Now, if you want to, you can take the dark mixture too on occasion, and you can pull in some darker ones. Don't be afraid to do that, but we'll mostly save that for some of this area here, and maybe in the back side of some of these if you get too much light. But you can go in there and take this darker mixture, add a little water to it. As long as you have nice, thin weeds, that's all that matters. See, I'll put some darker ones right here. That's a good spot for some dark ones, and probably right here too. It's so much fun. I've never painted much of this before. I have done a lot of weeds from where I'm at in the Midwest, but I've never done this kind, and this is really exciting. Okay, now after you've got most of your weeds over here done, and come back with some more of the light color. I'm going to go ahead and rinse the dark out here. I want to get some nice light ones in here. Look how free I'm being, okay? Most of you still have a tendency, at least from what I've seen now and some of the paintings I've been reviewing and some of the workshops some of you have attended, you're painting very stiff, very, very stiff. And you got to get a very fluid movement here if you want to have a nice painting. Okay, now let's come over here. And you just work your way across. See, folks, it's very important that you take whatever time is necessary to do a painting. That's why when we started these programs years ago, we decided to do succession paintings where we finished them in a few weeks. Even these are not, quote, finished paintings. They're just studies, suggestions of things to make you paint better. Well, yours will be the same way, or should be. Don't think of these as a finished painting. Think of them only as studies, ways to learn how to do things. Then you take this back, repaint it on your own time, and with adding your own little techniques, your own ideas, your own feelings, because that's what I do. I don't ever take any painting that I do like this on location as a finished piece. Now, once in a while, you'll get a study that's pretty sharp. You can go back home and touch it up and finish it up, and it makes a nice painting, but that's rare. These sessions are generally designed to just give you ideas, help you understand technique and composition and all those things. Okay, now, I don't want to spend tons of time because we are running out of time and we need to move on to a couple of other areas. But this is what you do now. Just go through and finish this up. I'd like to get a couple up in here though, and then I'm going to paint in the little rowboat here in the background, or by this, and we'll have this painting pretty much finished. Okay, a couple more. See, nice bright highlights right there. Come up right in front of this, whatever, this dock or this little pier here. Okay, this, I can do weeds forever. I love to do weeds. But see what a beautiful arrangement. And it helps tie in the color scheme of the painting too. Okay, now very quickly, I'm going to move this boat out here. I'm going to take this, my finger, kind of smudge that sketch out. But I'm going to go ahead and move the boat out here where the tip of it's here. And it's more angled in like this. Okay, and it's probably just got this rope around it right here. Maybe has an oar or two sticking out, who knows. Now take your number 6 sable brush, this little sable brush here. And this should be a very quick, simple thing. Don't spend a lot of time on it. Take a little water, take a little bit of this gray color that we used in the sand, if you have it. If not, just take a little blue and burnt sienna and white. Get sort of a brownish gray or a bluish gray. And it's more of just a dark color inside the boat here, like this. Just block that in. Okay, that's the inside of the boat. Now we're going to highlight a little bit of that. Now I want you to take just this yellowish white that we'd mixed up for the sand here. And let's do the bow of the boat like this. Now see, I'm letting some of the water, the mud that's in my brush is creating a soft little hot shadow right there. Excuse me. Now let's reflect this just like this right into the water. This is a very important step right here, folks. Reflections are everything. Now we're going to put a good number of details in this painting, so next week when we finish this, don't be afraid to add some of the things we're going to add, okay? We're going right to the edge there. Now on the back side of this, you're going to take this gray mixture with a little bit of blue, touch of brown. This should be a little darker right here. Okay, that's going to reflect a little in the water also. Okay, so you have that. And then you want to get just a little bit of the inside of this boat. You'll see a little bit of the inside right here. You're not going to see too much, but you will see a little bit, okay? Then take my brush and I kind of scratch over it like we did before, where the two come together. And this helps sort of settle the reflection in and make it look a little wetter. Then let's put the little seats. There's some seats in here. And the seats will come in here. There's probably two. There's one there. One there like that. So you can see the seats in the boat. Then take your script brush now and just gently, I'm going to put in the white highlight here, and I just want to put a little rim, a thin highlight, especially on the back side here, to kind of outline and make it look a little bit more rugged along the back here, this edge here. So that kind of gives it the effect of old wood, and the sun's kind of hitting the top of it, creating a nice effect. And that's already a beautiful, beautiful little boat. I love the way that looks in there. Well, as usual, folks, we're just about running out of time, so let me tell you where we're at. Now, we've spent a lot of time detailing this painting. It doesn't have a whole lot of things in it so much, but everything requires a little more detail. Next week, we're going to finish the detail work here, a little bit of detail work on the dock, and a little more in the foreground here. I may put a few little drifty clouds through here to kind of soften the sky and kind of tie it in a little bit more. But this has been a beautiful, fun, and exciting painting. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you like the programs, please don't hesitate to call your local station and let them know how much. That'll keep us on the air and keep all the cards and letters coming. We really appreciate them. I can't answer all of them in person, but I hope we're getting your questions answered on the program, okay? Well, God bless you. Stay inspired, and we'll see you again real soon on another Inspiration of Painting. Well, I'm glad you could join me again. Now we're going to finish up this painting finally. I know you're going to be happy about that. I certainly am going to be. So let's get started because we have a lot of work to do. We're still down on the Mississippi coastline and on the Gulf Coast, real close to the Gulf Shore National Seashore, and it's a wonderful place. We're back in this little cove here, and we've had a lot of fun working with the different types of things around here. Now, we have been spending a little more time in the last few paintings, in fact, with detail work, spending a little more time putting more emphasis on detail and light and dark and shadow, and that's good because it creates a little bit more, I guess, control that you need to learn about when you're handling brushes and paints and stuff. So today we're going to do the same thing. Now to finish this up, it's just nothing but detail work, highlighting, adding things, and not really creating any major changes. Although in the background here, right across from me here, you'll see bits and pieces of an old dike or something across here that's an old wooden dike, and it's going to be something we just do very easily by taking your number 6 sable brush, and I want you to take a little bit of burnt sienna and a touch of ultramarine blue and a touch of white, okay? Those 3 colors. And the color is not so important as the value. Let's test this value here. Okay, that's about right. You want it to be a little sort of a brownish value. you come across like this. Now don't cover up all of the green, because what this is, back in this little harbor here, they have had to, you know, shore up the shoreline, so to speak, with these little retaining walls. And these retaining walls have these old, they're made out of old wood and boards, and they've got posts and all kinds of things. So don't hesitate, for the interest of the painting, to go ahead and add, by turning your brush sideways, some of these very interesting little shapes and forms. Okay, like that. And then you can just gently reflect these things into the water. Now what we're doing here is, not only are we adding more of a finished effect to the painting, but we're also creating more interest to the composition. You know, our eye now has, when it wanders around back here, it kind of sees things instead of just wandering around. Okay, but you do want to get just a little bit of the reflection in there. Then take your script brush. Now remember, we left off last week using our script brush, and we were highlighting this boat here. Well, you take that same yellow-white highlight that we mixed up for the sand and for some of the other things, and you go ahead and you use it to highlight the edge of your post, the top of the this little retaining wall here. It's a very important highlight. Okay, you see how we're going across there like that? Just kind of get some nice highlight across here, and this sort of helps it, well, it makes you realize that this is something that's got some form to it, okay? And it's kind of neat looking. Then, right along the water's edge here, I want you to put a little bit of this bright highlight like this, because that's what it looks like. You can see the little white ripples right against the edge. And then while we got this brush in our hand, we're going to do the same thing throughout the water here and there. Now see, I'm going back, putting just a little bit of this glow in here, and then I want you to take the end of your brush. These are some of the refining techniques that artists use to create subtle softness, highlights. You can, and even if it's dry, you can still use your brush to kind of soften it in there. Now, keep using this little bit of a sparkle along the edge of where anything meets the water, where these posts meet the water, where the water meets the boats meet the water. Cross your reflections here, right over here, around the boat. See those nice little ripples. And actually what it is more of a sparkle than it is anything else. Now right up against the shoreline here, this is good because you want to get these nice little clean highlights right up against the edge. Little thinner, more delicate lines, kind of like, you know, we talked about the foam, kind of creates a foamy effect along the edge. Well, you want a little bit more movement of the water here, swishing back and forth, and you do that with this brush. See right here? And you apply the paint fairly thick. It's important that you get it on there fairly thick. Okay, well now you don't want to overdo it, but see how much more sparkly and glowing that makes the water? Now, anywhere else there's a white area, like this boat right here, you put some more highlights on it. It could be on the roof. It could be on anything, okay? So don't hesitate to take the time. I'm not going to spend all that time because it'd be kind of boring for you to just sit here and watch me do that. But you spend the time that you need to go through now and put in all the little details of highlighting that you want. Now, let's take this brush, the same little script brush. Now I'm going to put a couple of people standing around, and I think I'm going to use this phthalo yellow green, which is a new green we added. We're using it off and on. But all you do to make a person standing here, like maybe he's working on the side of this boat here, well, you just make a little swish, a little rounded curve at the top there, so that you can tell that those are shoulders, and then maybe use blue, a little blue here, where you can see maybe his part of his legs, part of his body. Okay, you can see part of him there, and then just a little bit of this, maybe this orange that we mixed up with a little bit of white mixed with it. for his head right there. Then you can take the green again and make like he has a long sleeve shirt on and his arm is bent down like this. See how you make his arm coming outward like that? Maybe he is working on the boat or whatever. I mean, it doesn't make any difference. And then you always take a little bit of this white color and you just put a little highlight right on it, on the back of his, like that. And it looks like there's a person there doing something. It's just a simple little touch. Now what I'm going to recommend is that you go through your entire painting in places like, for instance, right here we have a dark background. That would be a great spot to have someone. So I'm going to take a little bit of this blue. Maybe this person's just walking here. Okay, just make a little smudge or two for the top part of the body. Maybe you can use some of this tan color that we mixed up for the bottom part of the body. Maybe this person is walking, so you just put one leg back, one there like that, and you can kind of see this person working in there. It's just kind of neat. It's just suggestions. Then a little bit of a tan color for the head. And if you want to, you know, put a hat on one of them, you could put a hat up there. I'm going to get the blue a little bit more emphasized there. You know, maybe he has a hat on there, but there's a person standing there now. He's doing something. You may want to get a couple of people standing up on the boat. You could silhouette them. See, like this, you could just have his body there. See, it looks like a person standing there. Maybe another one there. You could have one up here on the bow of the boat. Maybe this person's facing the other way. Maybe there's another person standing or sitting behind him. But those are all very interesting little things you do, and that adds a little bit of color, adds a little bit of excitement to the painting, you know, besides just something, just simple objects. Now you've got some activity. Same thing with the seagulls. Now what I'd like to see you do is add some seagulls. There are endless seagulls, and they're sitting on tops of the mast of these boats, like way up here you'll see them. So what you need to do here, just make a little, just a little bit of a smudge in the shape of a bird. You can do it on any of these posts here. You can't really tell what they are, but we know by looking at this painting that we're by the ocean, and all these little white things you see sitting around here are seagulls. And then of course, to sort of get your imagination rolling, you come back in here with these whiter highlights against this blue sky to suggest the seagulls flying, and then you will know that that's what those are. Now you could do a couple of close-up ones over here on this, on the posts over here, which we may do if we have time before the paintings, before the day's over. The problem with these programs is we don't have enough time to do everything we want to do, and I really get frustrated with that, but that's just the way it is. So we do the best we can. Okay, there may be a couple sitting over here. In the background here, you can just kind of suggest them. Please remember that painting is nothing more than a bunch of suggestions of details. The bugs are still coming out and biting us once in a while. Now also with this light color, this white color, you want to drift some of the sand up against these weeds. Now this is something else I'm going to have you do on your own. I'm not going to mess with it, but I'm just going to show you a couple. See how I'm adding the color and drift it up into the weeds, kind of like doing snow, and we've done lots of snow paintings. So you just drift up. I'd go to all of these, do a little drifting. You can even take some of the white and you can make some white colored weeds come up into there. That kind of helps tie it all together, okay? So don't be afraid to pull in some of the white colored weeds in front of that, and that helps tie it all together. After you've kind of finished up all this stuff, if your painting is still wet and you're using you know, a wet on wet technique, let me show you something else that's really effective. If you'll take your palette knife, one that has a real sharp tip to it or a real sharp point, you can scratch in some of the lines, the rigging by just doing this. Of course, you want some dark ones too, but let's do some of the light ones. Now, if yours is not wet, then you'll have to use white with a little touch of oil, or your, not oil, water, or your alkyd painting medium here, and then put them in that way. But here, if you've got a wet background, so you can scratch in all of these wonderful little lines, just like I was showing you, you can scrape up highlights like this if you have a wet background. This adds a nice touch. You can use this technique for a lot of things. You can scratch in highlights on your buildings and barns or whatever if your background is wet. It's a wonderful technique. You can use it to highlight water, like this. See, this program, as I've told you before, is more of a program of technique and learning how to do a painting. Now, we've got to mix up a little bit of this. Oh, it's sort of an emerald green color because the nets are there. And I want you to take your script brush. Now, if you'll take this light, phthalo yellow green, just a little dab of that, and a little dab of ultramarine blue, right down here on your palette. Now see, it turns it sort of an emerald green. If you mix the phthalo yellow green and the ultramarine blue, you'll get a really nice green, okay? I'm going to add a little touch of white to it here to kind of opaque it and to make it a little lighter and a little brighter. Maybe a touch of blue. Okay, now you can see all of this stuff hanging down here. That is the rigging, or the shrimp, actual nets that they drag behind the boats here to catch the shrimp. So I want to make sure that I get that in there in the right spot. I want to be a little bit accurate. Okay, it's not going to be quite dark enough. I can tell that right now. So we're going to have to darken that. Add more of the ultramarine blue to this. It's got to show up. The contrast has to be much stronger than that. That's better. Now you just dry brush this in to suggest these nets hanging down here. And there's a little piece coming back that way. See how that works? Okay. Now in case you're wondering what all the strange noises are around here, and there's a bunch of them, including the bugs coming around here, this is close to the shrimp season. Now we're only about a month out from their season, and a lot of activity around here. All the shrimpers are getting their boats ready. By the way, now you may see some of these nets draped around here, sometimes hanging on underneath a dock. So I'm going to do this over here where they're working on them. So see, I'm going to droop those down there like maybe they're hanging from the edge of the building. I'll take just a little bit of white and yellow to highlight this with. Okay, just a little white and yellow to highlight these. And maybe a touch of the bright green. But remember, I was going to tell you all the noise around here are the shrimpers working on their boats, and a lot of activity because they're getting ready to head out and do their shrimping during the season. Okay, see, just a little highlight there. That adds a nice touch to this. Do a little bit of that on this one. Maybe little touches of the green here and there just to add a little interest to the painting. Okay, now there's some more rigging that goes on here that we have to get on, and some of the lines that you see that we put in white, there's some dark ones. Now you take your script brush with the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna, that's all. Just mix those two together. Get a nice sort of an inky, creamy mixture. Now you just add water with the paint, get it nice. So you can see down here, it's very fluid, okay? Very, very fluid. A little more than that. Okay. It's about the consistency of ink, actually. Now, I want you to come out here. There's a couple of support poles. Come out like that. And just barely skim the surface, creating some of the thinner lines, or whatever they are. These are all kinds of stuff here. There's some antennas here, of course, for their marine radios, so that they can contact the harbor. And out here, you know, there's bridges everywhere where they have to go under, and there's drawbridges and train bridges that are drawbridges, and they have to radio ahead and let them know they're coming so the bridges will open up. But by adding all these very interesting little shapes and cross pieces and little smudges, it looks just like what you're seeing here. Just so incredible how that changes the effect here. Okay, now then, a couple more things here and then we'll be done with this piece, and we'll be thinking seriously about our next painting. Okay, it's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, now let's move over here. Now I mentioned to you that we may put a few clouds in there, but we're going to do something different now. This is a good learning experience. We're going to use our palette knife, and now it doesn't matter if your painting is wet or dry, okay? Now I want to show you the knife that I'm using here. This is a medium-size knife, but it's got more of a rounded tip on it here, see? And it's got sort of a teardrop shape with a round tip. It's not a sharp point. You should take some of this yellow that you mixed up here for your foreground and some of the highlight, and starting up here in the corner, okay? Now, just kind of smudge it on. This is a wonderful painting for technique. It's such an exciting thing to be able to learn all these different things. Now, after you kind of smudge it on in a few places here, then you take it and you just kind of smudge it, roll it. Now I wanted this to be a little sticky, because if it's a little sticky, then it's much easier to blend and make it soft. See, I'm using the whole side of the knife here to create these sort of wispy, soft, fluffy clouds. We're really working in a little bit of a cloudy day today, so we don't see a whole lot of clouds, but when you do see them, this is exactly what you see, just rolling little smudges of cloud. This adds the character to the painting in terms of the sky here. And the reason we did this towards the end is because we didn't want to overdo the cloud formations, okay? It would have been very, very easy to overdo this. I'm actually letting it blend into the background here by smudging. See, I'm using sort of the edge of the knife. I'm kind of tipping it up a little bit there, okay? Now don't just leave it. You got to go back in there. And then I'm going to show you a final trick you can use with your brush here to kind of soften these in if you're struggling with the knife. I don't ever want to leave you in such a mess that you can't get out of it, because there are always ways to get out of this, okay? If you get yourself in a mess and you're not sure what to do with it, see, I can just go over this whole thing like this, sort of at an angle, and it kind of helps tie and blend everything together. This is just so incredible. I love the way that feels. It just drags, and you can feel it actually doing things. Well, we got bugs out here biting us now, and that's one of the disadvantages of this part of the country. You do have a lot of bugs. Other than that, it's just beautiful. Okay, put a little back in here. Work these in. See, when you're putting this on, the clouds are just going to sort of happen automatically. It just doesn't happen. It happens sort of automatically. Now you can go back to the brush, your original brush that you put this blue on with, which is, in this case, with my number 12 bristle brush. And you can actually go in here and you can kind of soften this if you really can't get it to work with your palette knife. So you can just take this and blend it in a little bit more. But you don't want to blend it too much. I got most of these pretty soft with my knife, but this is another technique. I usually just drag across like this very lightly. Some places where I want them a little bit more blended, you can go back in and do that. But you want to be careful, because you don't want these to disappear. You just want them to kind of work into the background of the sky here, okay? And that creates more of a subtle, soft sea breeze-like effect. It's kind of like the wind is gently blowing. Everything is beginning to Just kind of smudge along here. That's what they look like to me. These clouds is just like little smudges. And I'll spend a few minutes making sure that I get the softness like I want it, and that's just so beautiful. Okay, now then, let's put a couple of seagulls over here. Now I'm going to take my knife with a sharp point, and I'm going to use it as my sketching instrument. Now if yours is dry, you might want to use a pencil or at least a soft lead pencil. But I'm going to go ahead and sketch in a seagull here. You can't really see that. I'll put a couple of them. Then I'm going to take my number 6 or my number 4 round sable brush. And we also have the terns. The terns are an interesting bird out here too. They're very, very different. Now just take your yellowish white mixture that you mixed up here. And you may have to use your stick here. And just set a gull here. Now this gull will just be a little bit, just a little stroke like that. So just a sort of a comma, all right? Just a little comma. Then you have a little swish for the tail. It kind of sticks out like that. Can you see how it just sticks out? Now the head, that's just another comma, but it's going the other way. You just set it on top. Years ago when I was teaching how to paint these things, and I was holding seminars, a gentleman we were painting seagulls like this, and he had painted one that was close up, and he started with the legs first, and the legs were about an inch tall, and he put this little tiny body on there. Don't start with the legs first. It was really funny. We all had a good laugh, but you always put the body on first. Like for instance, if there's one sitting on the corner of this boat, make a comma back this way. See, like that. Make that a little bit thicker. And then I make a swish out to get the tail. And then another comma, but it's the other direction for the top of where the head is. Okay, and then you have a seagull sitting there. Now, if you get some of the beaks on these birds are different colors. They're kind of a brownish color, sometimes kind of orange. So I'm just going to take orange just for the sake of the painting. And go ahead and put a little, very gentle orange beak on that one, and one on this one. Okay, now don't get carried away with making really a lot of seagulls. Just a couple sitting here and there on the post will add all the character that you need. Now the final thing we're going to do here to add a little interest is this, and I want to show you, this is one of the fun things. I really kind of think this is probably something you'll enjoy more than almost anything. Just very quickly here and there, you can put some little like seashells or rocks or pebbles on the shoreline here just by taking a dark color, and it can be just about any color, and just make some little smudges like this, just like a little smudge. Okay, just a little dot, and then you dry brush down straight below it like a reflection, like that. Now and then you just gently smudge it. Okay, now what this does is create the suggestion of wet sand. A little smudge, a reflection just below, very gentle. Another one, and a little reflection just below. Another one, a little reflection. You just put a few of these around, and it looks just like little seashells. It looks like little bits of gravel or clumps of sand. What I would do is this: just go through like this, and do it sort of quickly. Get a whole bunch of little smudges and dabs of this color here along the shoreline. Now I want you to watch this real close here, okay? Because we're about to run out of time. I want to show you this last because you can take whatever time you need to finish this. Don't make them too dark. I got them a little dark there. And then every time you put one on that's big enough, then you just gently reflect right below, just like this, just smudge. And it looks like a reflection in the wet sand, okay? Just dry brush it down. This has been a lot of fun. I certainly hope you've enjoyed the program, but just do this throughout there until you get quite a few of those, and then basically you're done. It's been a wonderful, wonderful, exciting painting. We're going to be in a whole new, start a whole new painting next week. I hope you can join us, okay? God bless you, stay inspired, and keep painting.